see nothing on the stream here, so. Oh, well, I see us. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, full episode of the Second Sons. As always, I am Roy Rogers of the New York City Meta, but you guys aren't really here for me or for our usual crew. So since he's the champion, I'm going to allow Chris to introduce himself first. Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Roy. How are you?
I'm good. How's the plane flight? Has it sunk in yet that you've got a card design?
The card design part sunk in, 10 seconds after, when the only question I got for the rest of the night was, what are you going to do with your card design?
Hey, is it going to be out? Wait, was the second question, is it going to be out sooner than Ryan's?
That would be good. I asked, what are you going to sing?
That's true. Yeah, Glazer got me on the karaoke question, so.
All right, and then, so let's introduce him second, which is pretty typical for Seth. How are you doing today, Seth?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Excellent.
So, all right, and then we have our usual crew with us. Who wants to go for? Well, Sid, how about you? How are you doing today, Sid? How was Kansas?
Sid's doing well. Got back from Kansas while everyone else was at GenCon. Very jealous. A little sunburnt, but anxious to hear what everyone has to say about their experience. Pretty excited. Especially my boy, Chris.
All right. And Buzz, how are you?
I'm great, as usual.
Thank you for getting up again at 4 a.m. for this wonderful shit
I'm
show.
I'm watching Dota, so it's fine.
Right, so
DC
Buzz
LGD.
isn't really going to be paying attention much this episode. And then finally, last and certainly least, we have Aaron Glazer.
Hello, and I'd just like to know this is no sacrifice for Buzz. He was on at this time yesterday, too.
Yeah.
For no goddamn reason.
The week of the international, well, the weeks
The
of
international,
the international. Yeah, I am always awake.
All right, so since we have probably one of our largest audiences in a while, let's just jump right into it. So last weekend was GenCon, and the first real GenCon of the second edition, which was kind of a pretty interesting experience. And we have sort of three people representing sort of three of the more influential North American metas here. We've got Chris Schoenthal, our champ, can give us the SoCal perspective. We've got Aaron, who can give the sort of New York, Canada perspective, and Seth, who can give us the DC perspective as much as they're willing to sort of share between now and Worlds.
Hey,
so,
Seth, is it all right if we stream this?
So
Ask
after
Chris, I don't know.
So after we talk a little bit about, I guess, sort of like what people's reads of the meta were going into the event, then we can talk sort of about how Chris and Seth's days sort of went. So Chris, again, since you're the champion, you get to go first. What was sort of your read of the meta before you sat down and actually played a game? What did you think you were going to see coming in, and why did you bring the deck you brought?
So going into it, I actually hadn't really planned to go to Gen Con until about a month before, when I found out that a couple of the meta mates of mine were going as well. And we kind of sat down because I work for Comic-Con, which is right between when I decided I was going and Gen Con itself. So that was a little awkward that I was going to have to take basically a week and a half off to do work stuff. But we sat down, we sort of analyzed where things were. Stark Fealty had just won Origins, so we knew that was going to be on everybody's radar. Everybody was still complaining about Lannister, so that was an obvious probability. And then Martell Lion, we thought was maybe a deck we'd see a good amount of to try and sort of aim at both of those other targets and counter those. And we'd actually started with a Martell Lion build ourselves that we liked a good amount. But then it started losing a good amount, and we were like, well, maybe this isn't the right choice. And eventually sort of sank into if you can't beat the best deck, just play the best deck.
We should have so done that.
I know, but we'll get to you. You're going last, Glazer. All right, so Seth, what was sort of the read of you and DC's sort of going? Because you guys didn't just bring one, you brought like 3 or 4 decks. So, and I have a specific question for you from Dave Bamford, which is, so what was your read of the meta, and why did you decide to play his deck, Martell Wolf?
Oh, that's a good question. Dave's the best. I had to go for whatever the best was. Our read was We expected there to be a lot of Lanny, and then some kind of even distribution of Barra, Martell, and Stark. I don't think Stark, despite doing really well, ever got played as much as it probably deserved. And so we figured a pretty even distribution between those three. So step one, you have to beat Lanny. You can't win any tournaments if you don't beat Lanny. And in order to do that, there's very few decks that you pick or you play Lanny yourself. And the reason we didn't want to play Lanny, or I didn't want to play Lanny, was even though they were probably the strongest decks, is because everybody is very practiced against Lanny. Every player, no matter how inexperienced they are, knows how to ice Tywin, how to beat Tywin, how to milk Tywin. Like that's everybody's number one objective, is to kill Tywin. They all know how to do it. So we were looking around at something else that would hopefully compete with Lanny, and that's how we settled on Martell. And Stark, the Stark banner, was useful in a couple ways, but particularly it was useful against Stark because you have ward for Caitlyn. And if you can ward their Caitlyn, when you have Gaston, they can't do anything.
And then Glazer, what was the perspective of totally the build group I was not a part of?
All right. So New York, Boston, and Ottawa decided to build together, and we pretty quickly learned that Lanny Dragon ate absolutely everything. Like it ate everything except Stark, and like so we spent I don't know, months seeing what could beat both, and we came up with almost nothing that was better than like 60-40 against both. So I don't know, a week before, I decided that like if nothing's beating them, then there should be a Lannister banner that has some kind of trick. So we tried Martell and Stark. We actually had almost we didn't have the Great John's Vanguards from Seth's deck. We had the same thing in a Martell build, the same basic banner cards, and we tried the Sun stuff because, you know, Stark and Lannister are a lot less scary when they don't have military icons. So we took those two. Unfortunately, we forgot rule number 1 of bringing decks to GenCon, which is it has to crush noobs. And your decks crush noobs while ours have like long, tiring games against noobs. So
I think mine was the same way. I definitely don't think our deck was a noob crusher. It was a grind.
then why did you not remember rule number 1, Seth? Corey's the one who told us rule number 1.
All right, Sid, Buzz, anything you want to questions you want to ask about the sort of meta read before I sort of ask them specifically how their days went?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think everyone touched on kind of where the meta was at. I don't think there was any real surprises in everyone's explanation because I think the meta. I mean, it feels like a pretty well-known quantity. Like Seth said, you know, that you expect Lanny to be popular. I mean, that's no controversial statement, right? And that everything else to kind of be right there. Well, you know, 3 or 4 other factions to be right there. The one surprise I think that showed up was that people, maybe the Night's Watch builds that are now kind of popular right now, I think they kind of hit at the right time. Obviously, they weren't successful in the end, but I think they were more successful than people assumed they would be going into the tournament. So that was my kind of, not surprise, but I guess I enjoyed seeing something kind of sneak into the top there, or near the top, into the second day at least, that was unexpected. I like to see that.
Buzz?
I mean,
No? Oh.
they're all good players. They identified the meta. They brought a few different decks. Yeah, it's like every big tournament, I guess.
Okay.
I'm disappointed that we didn't see Martell Lion, but I won't be bringing it myself to Fracas because I think it's figured out. Maybe people are practicing against it almost as much as they practice against
Martell Line is such a greedy deck. It's just, I want to beat up on noobs. I want to hit them with tears. I want their big characters. Oh, I got tainted. I got tears. I got them.
Yep.
Yeah, so how did that deck do for you in Origins, by the way?
I played your deck. I played Lanny into Martell at Origins.
Oh, I was told that you played the other deck, that you played Martell Lion.
You gotta get some better scouting.
You know what?
Man.
You know what the problem is? Sandy's always drunk.
Oh, that's true. We're never relying on Sandy for our Origins information because he didn't tell us a single fucking Barra deck was at Origins. Anyway, so we'll go to the actual day. We'll start with person who finished worst, which would be Glazer, and then we'll move sort of up. So, Aaron, how was your day?
So I played, I don't know, I made the second day, so I finished I think 33rd. I played 9 games, and 7 of them were over on setup. I mean, like, either I set up great or I didn't, or they set up great and I didn't, and that was just the game. So, second edition's in a really good place.
Cry baby.
Yeah. I mean, I did well. It's not like I shit the bed or anything. It's just like, I was like, oh, well, we flipped, I redrew, and I was like, I win this game. Or we flipped, I redrew, and I was like, I lose this game. And that was it.
All right, Seth, how did your day go? Don't talk about the final game, sort of your run into that final.
Sure. Well, the final game was a little different than the other games, so I can split them up. It was a hard tournament for me. The 2 decks I didn't want to play against were Barra Fealty and Greyjoy Fealty, and on the first day I had to play against both, and I had close games against both. So it was a grind both days, and then day 2, it was also, I had a couple tough games, and then especially in the game against Kevin Shee, that was the deck probably of all the cut decks I wanted to play the least, and I had to play it in the top 8. Obviously, top 4 was a little easier, but we'll get to that. And I think I played really well. I played really well, really up until the last game, and then I guess we'll talk about that when we come around to it.
Why didn't you want to play Greyjoy Fealty? Always as Martell, it's like, oh baby, a free win for me.
Why do you think that, Buzz? Why do you think it's a plus?
Gaston Grey. It just wrecks their shit so much. But I also play First Snow. I don't know if you play First Snow.
No, I don't play First Snow.
Okay.
So they have the
never mind.
Dealers, they have Newly Made Lord. They're coming for the Gaston.
Thank you for that, by the way. I really appreciate you not playing First Snow into my my board that on the first 3 turns would have just been absolutely decimated by it.
You're welcome.
All right, Chris. All right, champ. So how did your day go up to sort of the top games?
So the first day, obviously, I was top of Swiss at 6-0, and everybody was texting me, "Yeah, King of Swiss," and I was like, "No, there's 3 more rounds of Swiss. You can't tell me that yet. You don't know that's an absolute curse." And it worked out that way because the 3 games of Swiss on day 2, I went 1-2. So King of Swiss is not where you necessarily want to be. But I played against 2 Martell Lions on that first day, a Lanny Kraken, a Lanny Wolf, and a Greyjoy Dragon. So it went. There were a couple games that were not especially close, and then there were, some of the games were pretty good. One of them got close to going to time, but then the games on day 2, the 2 that I lost, the first one I lost to just an absolute misplay on my part, and then the second one I lost to a magical top deck on my opponent's part. So I felt like those are the 2 ways you can lose in 2.0 is your opponent wins because he got the cards he needed, and you lose because you did something really dumb. And so I got those out of the way, and then from there, just decided to run it up.
Before we move on, Chris, can I ask you, those Martell Lion games, I would think that would be a fair matchup against your deck. What were those games like?
They weren't like runaway blowouts by any means, but I have a good amount of tools and a good amount of play against them. I mean, you saw that Milk on Nymeria is pretty devastating. One of the games I milked Nymeria 3 separate times after your move. It was Nymeria, Milk, Confiscation, Nymeria, Milk, Rattleshirts it off, kill the Rattleshirts with a Tears, milk the 3rd one. It was just, So
Did that player start crying after at that point?
He wasn't too happy.
Doesn't let it get.
And then the second game went to time. He kind of overextended into a Wildfire and had a ton of power on Harmon Uller and was kind of leaning on him for some reason. And I just Tears Harmon at the end of the game and won. So.
Aww.
So before we move on and we talk sort of about the top 4, and we'll sort of bring some of the drama in here. So what did you guys think of the graduated cut, like as an experience? And that will sort of bring in the sort of main drama with the graduated cut, which is, according to the official FFG rules, the strength of schedule is supposed to be maintained. So some of those games that Chris had trouble with for example, in the graduated cut should not have happened. But between, while I guess they were partying on, Thursday night, the FFG employees lost the strength of schedule and had basically rebooted the tournament with the graduated cut. So it was random pairings for the first round. So what did you guys think of that experience? Since this was sort of the first premiere, I guess Origins is that awkward kind of somewhat premiere event. So
no one cares about Origins.
Okay. So anyway, no one cares about Origins. That we did a whole episode about that. So the first real premiere event with the graduated cut. What did you all think of that?
So I'm kind of a tournament structure nut in the first place. I do the organized play for the Star Wars collectible card game, the Decipher one. We still have tournaments and stuff. So I'm the OP guy for that. So to me, I really enjoyed the concept of the graduated cut. It's something they kind of took directly from Magic's Grand Prix. You have to go X and so to make day 2, and then from there you may still not make the cut, but you have a chance to finish well and to get some prizes. And I thought they pulled it off fine, aside from, like you said, the software issues that they had. Now that, I think that possibly hurt Seth more than it hurt me, because there were only 3 6-0s, so I had a 50-50 chance of playing either of them anyway. So that wasn't as big a deal for me as it was for Seth, probably, who I believe ended up playing Kid on day 2. Is that right, Seth?
No. So I played. There were 4 6-0s, and I played the other one.
Oh, okay. There were 4 6-0s. So that didn't, the first
Fair
one
enough.
that big.
No, I was 6-0.
Oh,
Right. So it wasn't as bad as I thought. But overall, as a concept, I think it worked pretty well. The frustrating thing about being 4-2 and having to come back with no real shot of making the actual cut is probably a frustrating experience for some of the players, and I totally would understand that. But I don't know if that's necessarily something that you can solve easily.
Yeah, I think you really only have FFG has one choice. You can either cut such that people who could make it don't play on day 2, or you can cut such that people who play on day 2 at the lowest rung can't make it even if they win out. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
Absolutely. But I personally just generally agree with Chris that a second day is really good, because even for people, just being able to say, even if you're 4-2 and go to the graduated cut and you have no chance of making the top 8 or top 16, be able to say, I made the second day at GenCon is a legitimate achievement, and it's something that someone can build on, and then they can say, well, next year I'm going to work really hard to try to break. And giving people sort of clear milestones that they can do and build up their own sort of record and their own reputation at high competitive play is something really good. I mean, it may take some cultural change with Thrones to sort of start respecting the idea of someone breaking on the second day as being, the first step towards being a Seth or a Chris or a Simone or a Ryan kind of level player. Is, it's going to take some time, but I think overall, if they don't fuck up the strength schedule next year or at Worlds, it'll be pretty good. Glazer?
Right, Simone doesn't count as a top player anymore, so you need to drop him from that list.
Okay.
Aaron, that's something that
okay.
Going into even in the regionals and store championship season, there was something that I had to grapple with a little bit. This is the first year since I started playing in 2011 that I haven't won a regional or a store championship, and so I was a little down about that. But then a couple people came to me and said, in 2.0 you can't expect to just have a win like that. Like it's I don't want to get into the it's a luck-based format thing, because I don't think it is. Obviously, I may be a little biased at this point.
You can't say it now.
But
No more 2.0ing from
making a cut,
That's
making
all.
a top 4 at a regional, is still a real achievement in this game. And I think your point to making a day 2 and having enough rounds of Swiss where that's an accomplishment is a real step forward for FFG's Origins play.
Aaron, Sid, Buzz, any comments?
In theory, I like what everyone's saying. This day 2 thing, but it's still it doesn't sit well with me that it could be mathematically impossible. If I'm at GenCon, I've flown out there, I'd traveled there. If they were like, hey man, you're 46th place. I go, so is there any chance, like if all the top guys just go 0-3 and I go 3-0, can I? And they're like, no, you're not making the top 8. I would just say, well, then I'll drop. And I would do it amicably. I wouldn't be mad about it, but I would just say, well, I choose not to play, 3 to 5 more hours if I've got a convention that I can go do other stuff in. So I'm not mad about it. I don't think it's a bad system. I don't know how to make it better, except for to just lessen the graduated cut so people aren't in that position. But
Wait, I need
Quick
someone who's
follow-up
good at
question
math.
for Sid though.
Oh, okay.
sure.
Would you do it at Worlds though?
Would I do it at
Worlds,
Worlds?
they're doing a graduated cut at Worlds.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know they
same
are.
shit.
If I end up like 46th, 47th, would I do? Well, maybe only because there's nothing else to do there. So like I'm flying out on Friday because I'm a firm believer that there's not much else to do there after Thursday. So yeah, I might. But honestly, if someone else was like, "Hey, we're gonna sit down and play this board game. You want to join?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, let's do that." If I had no chance, because I mean, I'm just playing for fun there. I can do that anytime.
So here's
Until
a question.
Wait.
Here's a
I need someone who's good at math.
no one here. It's fine.
No,
No,
okay.
Chris.
Maybe
Someone in the chat. Is there a reason that like all the 6 and O's and 5 and 1s can't just move on to the cut and then like let all the 4 and 2s do a mini tournament to see who gets the last couple spots? Like just have them there early the next day. 4 and 2 means that you're on the bubble and there's like these 3 spots left. You guys play a tournament.
When you say the 6 and O's and 5 and 1s move on to the cut, are you
The real
at that
cut. The real
right.
cut.
So you're advocating at that point moving to single elimination.
Correct.
Okay, so my argument to that would be more rounds of Swiss with a smaller cut is a more accurate portrayal of how people did in the tournaments at large, and that's why you do more rounds of Swiss and cut to 8 as opposed to doing like 6 rounds and cut to 32, because then variance comes in. Then you talk about, oh, I got knocked out because I got one bad flop in my second game.
Right, but you're already doing the same 6 games for everyone, right?
So
And
I want
once
to point out here
Let's
that
get that talk.
the graduated cut is just a continuation of Swiss. It's just more Swiss. So like to
Yeah,
Luke's point, yes, 46 can't make it. But your other option is to cut for the graduated cut, which is not really a cut, to slice it in such a way that people who do have a chance stop playing early. So you either bring in people who don't have a chance or you eliminate people who did still have a chance. Because of the math, you can't get a perfect selection. So I think the better option is bring in that 46, let him play if he wants, even though he almost certainly can't make it, and 48 certainly can't make it. But you overshoot instead of under.
And
Yeah,
let's not forget that a
tried-
lot of people want to
I tried.
screen for their friends. Like there was totally a lot of that going on at GenCon, where people
What?
who couldn't make the cut were willing to keep playing because they could knock somebody out of the
Sure.
running and make it easier for their friends who were up further up. And
Yeah,
so
I
and that's
tried
its
to
own.
drop.
Yeah,
When I was 3 and 2, whatever, I just tried to drop. I wanted to go drink with Kaiser, and John yelled at me, so I had to keep playing. And then I tried to drop again, and John yelled at me again, and I just scooped. I was like, "Fuck this, I'm done."
And the other thing is, and whether the question I was going to ask earlier is FFG's pricing, saying we have prizes for top 16 when we're cutting to top 8. We have them. I think for the mats or the tokens. I don't remember which was the 16 prize.
The tokens, I think, were the
The
16.
tokens. Okay. So saying that, do you see that as them? Do you see that as causing the problem of making people that don't really have a chance play, or is that softening the blow so people are incentivized to continue playing even though they don't technically have a shot at the actual cut?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna follow up for Lucas. If until they make a point system where if I make 17th and I get points for worlds or something, like a league type thing.
Like a rating system.
Yeah. I will drop every time I'm out of the cut. Once there is no chance for me to get in, I am gone always.
The alcoholic's choice.
Yeah. I mean,
There's no reason
I'm-
for me to play, and giving that what Chris is saying, it's one way to soften the blow, right? Because it's almost late points. I can make top 16, but not top 8. But there's still those people who maybe, even when they're 48th or something, can't make top 16, right?
I
I'd
also
like
think they need to get better prizes.
I didn't know
yeah,
the
of
math
course.
on that, but you're definitely correct that even some of the X's and 2's missed. I think it went down to like 19th or 20th, something like that. So you're correct there.
And see, even better prizes wouldn't really change my mind. I mean, I'm with Buzz. At that point, I'm pretty invested in the tournament, and if I can't win, maybe it's just my personality. I would just feel dejected those last 3 games, knowing that that they maybe had some effect on other people, but they couldn't help me. I would just probably go to a dark place and, and wouldn't have a lot of fun. So
Right,
I mean, better just to step back.
Seth actually did that to me, by the way. One year when I needed his strength of schedule fucking dropped the second he was eliminated. And I missed the cut on the bubble with his strength of
That
schedule.
is true.
Because he couldn't have
That's the way it
submarined
goes.
up.
That's the way it goes. I mean,
Fucker.
I like that people who did drop, they didn't just bring in other people to fill those spots, like at 47th or 48th or whatever, because that would have just been like salt in the wound. Like, hey, you want to come back tomorrow? I know you got 49th, but some people decided it wasn't worth their time. You want to come waste your time?
Well, but actually, there were people
didn't do that.
upset at Gen Con that, who wanted to play because they didn't necessarily have anything else that they wanted to do, or they just love playing competitive Thrones, who were like, oh, 48th dropped, I was 49th. I'd love a chance to win X tokens, right? I think some of it has to do with the culture around competitive Thrones.
In fact, you mentioned that, Roy. People at the 48th person, the breakers for 48, were also tied with 49 and 50, and I believe it was the 50th person that was actually mad that they didn't move the cut down to them because of the breakers were the same. So there's definitely still people who want to play down at those levels.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the opposite of Sid. Like, if you tell me I make the graduated cut, I'm gonna play until, they tell me to stop because I want to see how far I can go and get the prizes. Like,
There's so much alcohol in the world.
I mean, I could drink while doing it at that point. If you tell me I'm like, there's no way I can make the cut, maybe I'll drink while playing. But
It's
I
just
still like-
drop,
I mean-
drop and prepare for the melee. It's perfect.
well, I kind of did that in the sense I
You
played
don't do
Star
that either.
Wars
You don't do
and
that.
then did pretty well at the melee, but we'll get there. Okay, so any more sort of thoughts about the graduated cut in general before we sort of move into probably the next piece of sort of drama, which is sort of the top
can we-
4?
Let's do controversies in order. So we have to make everyone fucking wait for the top 4 and then a recording.
Okay, so what's the next piece of drama then, Aaron, since it's escaping me?
Matt's scoring, Matt Gemmon
Oh yes, Matt
of
Gelman.
Canada should have made the cut had had FFG not fucked up his scoring, and then FFG blamed him and told him to go away.
So this was the guy that Chris Kaiser posted as a hypothetical that
Yeah.
had lost round 5.
Matt specifically wanted to hold off for us to tell the story, so yes, it's the hypothetical Chris Kaiser
Wait,
person.
hold on a second. Is Seth literally hiding in a closet right now?
I've relocated to a closet. Yes.
Do your roommate / girlfriend think that we're being too loud?
Is
No,
it
I
like,
was just
like
I was
last
just
days?
preceding that comment, so I moved in as a preventative measure.
He's gone into the bunker. Like where did he go?
All right. So yeah, the thing is, the basic is that I believe it was the last round of Swiss was the 5th round, right? Or was it there was 6 rounds? No, I went 3-3.
They
So
posted after the 6th round the stats.
right. Well, the 5th round for Matt Gelman of Ottawa and Thunder Bay was entered improperly, and Matt didn't know until after the 6th round that he was entered improperly. A win that Matt got for that round. Which was entered properly on the sheet, so there was no player error. Both players initialed the correct win. Was not entered properly by FFG. And then when Matt went and was like, "Wait, I should totally be in the cut with my record," they said, "Oh, well, Danny, to his credit, was legitimately upset and went over to the tournament people, and the tournament people said, "Oh, we misentered this. We announced that you should, after each round, come up and correct your score if it's wrong." And
Wait, did
you
anyone
are
hear
out of
that
luck.
announcement? Did anyone hear that announcement? 'Cause
I heard that
first-
announcement on the second day. I did not hear it on the first day.
Yeah, I didn't either.
On the second day, and when Star Wars was going on, which I was playing during the second day, because I went 3-3. I didn't do any of this fancy stuff these guys did in the Joust. I heard them announce this, but when I was playing Joust, I did not hear it. And so Matt was screwed. They gave him the sweet Night's Watch house card, and then basically told him to go on and have a good day. Yeah, that's exactly right. So they sort of patted him on the head and said
have
that.
fun.
So yeah, that's kind of that sort of begat that whole Facebook discussion over whose responsibility it is to track your score in this kind of tournament. So I'm going to throw it open to anybody here. What do you think? Who is fundamentally responsible at the end of the day? Oh, Sid wants to start.
The
with
player
me?
is.
This.
I don't care if there were no announcements. The player is. This is FFG. They are a known entity. This is like no one should be shocked. I've been to 3 worlds, have never made it near the top or anything, but I've done well. I've had a winning record at every one, and every time I sit down next to my opponent, I say, "What's your record?" Do you just make sure? And one year they said the wrong thing, and I ran up and said, "Hey, we're mispaired," and they fixed it real quick, right? And that happens all the time. You just ask them, "Hey, what's your record?" It even has happened at local California tournaments. Mispairings, they happen, right? It's just a bunch of guys slamming keyboard buttons. They're gonna mess up. So you just ask your opponent, "Hey, what's your record?" That's what I've always done, because I assume someone will screw up. Someone will screw up. It's gonna happen. There's no question about it.
I want to provide one quick counterfactual before we get into this. Is Lauren Fitch did exactly what Sid asked at Worlds last year, and then they consistently screwed up her pairings for the entire rest of the Swiss rounds. So she bubbled out of the cut at Worlds.
5-2, despite having despite that was so shitty.
That was real bad.
Other folks,
go for it. No one else has a strong opinion. I'm the only one with a hot take. Come on.
No, I think that the FFG is dumb rule is a very important rule to keep in mind for everything that you do with FFG. But no, it's FFG's fault. Like, stop being dumb. You have to take care of these things. Like, they were like, we posted it and we made these announcements that, like, I don't know. I know 1 or 2 Thronesers. I don't know fucking anyone who heard. And then they were like, but it was on your sheet. They didn't tell us it was on our sheet. All I looked at for my sheet for was to check an initial. It was check initial, hand in. Check initial, hand in. I spent 0 time looking at that sheet. If they don't tell us it's on there, who fucking knows? No. FFG is at fault. I don't know what the fuck they could have done, but giving him a pat on the head and sending him in his way, probably not good enough.
Yeah, FFG, they suck at some of this stuff. Origins, I got paired against Aaron Broderick in the very first round, and then we asked, so does this guarantee that we cannot be paired in the graduated cut? And they said yes. And then the next day in the graduated cut, 2 people who had played on the first day got paired. Look, that didn't happen to us, but if that had happened after we got told officially no, what do you do?
That happened
to
me.
I scream at these people?
I played someone in 2 of my losses were to the same person in the cut and the graduated cut.
It happened at Origins. They did the same thing.
I asked, and they were like, no, it happens. And it's like, no, it's really not supposed to.
The same thing as the strength of schedule issue, or they can't figure out how to not dump the records. And if they dump the records, the pairings are separate.
But that's so ridiculous.
Guys, remember, fool me once, shame on you.
Yeah.
Fool me 29 times, it's on me. Like, come on. You can't expect them to figure it out. You expect them to screw up, and you cover your ass. Come on.
I'm with you, Luke.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on. What was it? 3 years or 4 years ago, they told the wrong person they had won overall championship, and there was like a mini celebration, and then they had to go, "Oh, sorry,
Ryan
you weren't
Jones.
the overall champion," and they gave it to somebody else, a SoCal person. So I was happy about that change. But it was still just a monumental screw up, right? Come on.
Dude, you're gonna run these terms. Either don't run them or do them fucking right.
What does that even mean?
What is? Okay, whatever. Hey,
the
wait.
data entry issue. I feel like Matt got fucked.
Hey,
Matt's a good friend of mine.
Buzz. How often does this happen in Europe, where it's not fixed?
I don't know, never.
But
okay,
so it's clearly not fucking impossible.
FFG doesn't run tournaments in.
Yeah, you know how often it's happened in New York? No. Never when we run our tournaments. So it's clearly not fucking impossible.
I do double check everybody's pairings after each round.
Amazing how people do.
But we don't have 220 people.
You know what? Stalik does. Bataya does. Like, all these giant tournaments where it's never happened that Buzz has been at. Yeah. Like, don't use the numbers as an excuse. Get your shit together. Every time we have a problem with this game, or 95% of the time, it's FFGOP sucks at their jobs. Wonder if we can do anything about that tomorrow.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a boring conversation. Can we talk about Gen Con?
Yeah, there you go. All right. So let's go back. So Aaron, what's next on your drama list?
I don't know. I closed that window. Next is. I mean, we don't have to actually talk about this one, but skip the Kaiser stuff. Kid getting eliminated due to the second tiebreaker.
Yeah. Since Seth is closest to Kid here, what is your opinion on this? So just to give the story to people who weren't there, Kid, this was in the graduated cup. Was this Kid's decider match of whether or not he was going to be in? Seth?
Yeah, it was game 2 of the day.
The middle game.
Of the day or of the graduated
Of the
cup?
graduated cut.
It was
The
round.
graduated cup, right. So he and his opponent drew exactly the same number of cards. That's the thing that makes this crazy. So they drew exactly the same number of cards, and his opponent won because Kid was running a 61 card deck, and his opponent was running a 62 card deck.
Banter
And-
wins. Banter wins.
Banter.
It's super banter, uber banter, I guess, at that point. So this is, and also like a few other people in the Swiss, right? If you listen to the latest Brotherhood episode, they have an interview with James Bathis, who won one of the regional and top aided in the
Top aided.
he was in the Baltimore regional. He won, and then he top aided out here in New Jersey. He also got eliminated from a chance of making the graduated cut by a similar situation to what happened to Kid. So it sort of happened throughout the day. So what do we think of now that this tiebreaker of cards in the deck is out there and live? What do we think?
Build for banter.
I mean, the funny thing is, I think most people thought like it was ridiculous, but wouldn't really have much of an effect on big tournaments. But there was, I mean, I don't know, between 3 to 4 deck size wins that took place over the course of the 2 days. That's pretty significant, I think. Maybe people underestimated how often it would happen. I wasn't in the tournament, so I can just kind of sit back and laugh. And I mean, knowing Kid, I know Kid all right. I bet you his grapes aren't all that sour, but
They were pretty sour the day of.
Were they pretty sour? Okay,
Moderately sour.
Yeah.
sorry, Kid, but it's just all I can do is laugh about it still. So it's ridiculous, but it's amusing. But if it happened to me, you better believe I'd be pissed.
So Seth, I'm assuming running the Corey 60, right? Like 60 cards in your deck.
60.
So that's a big risk now, man. If you end up tied with power there. So
I'm not worried about that.
Are you not worried about it? So you'll always be up power, even if you go to time
Or lose.
or lose.
He will be upper power because he doesn't have 61 cards, right?
I drew the card I needed, not the
Yeah.
61st card.
But my 61st card is Tywin, so I need to play the 61 cards.
Yeah, 4th Tywin, that is pretty good.
Yeah, with Magic deck construction now. All right.
No, I think
One of the lines of the rock box, Tywin.
Oh God. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was spoiled today. What the fuck, FFG?
it's
like, we're gonna give you the-
I mean,
Tiebreaker,
Tiebreaker
the
sucks.
best card in the game, and a pillage card. Let's see which you play.
We'll talk about that
Tiebreakers
later.
First card. It double helps you with the win condition.
Against Kid.
I just think
Seth.
tiebreakers are naturally, they suck. It's a game that's not meant to have the time limit, so they suck. I think the cards in deck is a particularly weak tiebreaker. They've linked it because it's technically a win condition, but it should be, I think, standing strength. Really, anything is better than cards left in deck just because it's a win condition. But it's fine. I mean, it's a pretty fringe scenario. It sucks. It's just it's part of the time issue. That's all it is.
I mean, but is it a fringe scenario when it happened twice at one of the 2 biggest American tournaments of the year? Like, it already eliminated or contributed to the eliminating of 2 different people. That's, like, I don't think it's that fringe. I feel like, I mean, I don't think they're going to do anything to fix it, but I feel like it warrants fixing.
Well, Kid needs to take all those shitty cards out of his deck and win.
It's true. It's his fault, really. Just get the power.
You know. Okay. And then, all right, well, let's get to the real drama then, which is, of course, the top 4 game. Chris, you played your top 4 game, right? What was it like?
I had an absolute barn burner of a match against. I'm gonna pull up my phone here because I want to get his name correct.
John Palmer, right?
Sean Palmer, yeah. And he's apparently
L5R player.
L5R player who is into Thrones biding his time until FFG re-releases L5R, and it was a hell of a game. It was a long game. It was a tiring game. And in the end, it came down to he swung for 28 military strength, and I had 31 military strength on the board. He had 4 renowned characters that would have won him the game had the challenge gone through, and I had 3 blocking and 1 off my renown. So it was not as close as Seth in my game, I don't think, but it was certainly almost as stressful. And Danny even came up to me after that game and said, if you need to take 15 minutes, breathe a little bit before the finals, feel free. Like that was a crazy game.
Nice.
What made it really easy for you to be able to take 15 minutes between the finals? Because something else happened in the top 4, right? Seth, how did your top 4 game go?
I didn't play. I got paired against the Metamate. I got paired against Chad Baumgart, and we talked. He said before the game, "Do you want this? Because I'm burnt out. I have somewhere else I'm supposed to be anyway." And I said, "Yeah, I want it." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to play then. I'm going to scoop." And I said, "I'll take it, sure."
I hear this was very
Aren't you-
controversial.
No, aren't you just higher on the list?
Yeah, the pyramid.
Doesn't
You're
matter
just-
what he
you're at the top
thinks.
of the
You're
pyramid.
higher
Depends
on
on
the
who you're
list.
asking. You ask me, I'm always on top of the list.
Yeah,
No,
well,
let's
elaborate
follow
on
the
the very
thread.
top.
Where
It's the
exactly
Pharaoh,
did
right?
Chad have to be? Was it just like watching you play in the finals? Is that where he had to be? Where did he really have to be?
He had to go. He had to meet one of his other buddies. I don't know. I mean, one of the other Wausau dudes.
So we've got an allegation from Ryan Jones in the chat that you are all just different limbs of Corey. That you're an arm and Chad is a leg, and that's how this happened. What do you say to that?
Nothing. I mean, I don't know. You can ask.
Have you
Chad.
ever formed Voltron?
Well, I
At
think
Melee
it's more the metaphor
Finals.
to go through as a Cthulhu-like
Finals.
creature that has
Well,
the
that's right. You
tentacles.
tried to form Voltron, and then 3 people got DQ'd for it. I understand.
It was before my time, unfortunately. I can't take any credit for that one. Yeah, that one. I don't know. I don't really get the controversy because it was Chad's choice. He offered it to me. He asked Danny, and Danny said it was fine. So like, people want to cast these aspersions on me, like, "Oh, Seth, you didn't deserve it." And I'm like, the dude offered. I said yes. The judge and game designer's there. He says yes. Whatever.
At the end of the day, you can't force somebody to play. You just can't, and that's why concession's a legal end of a game. Like I don't hold it against you necessarily. I mean, you get. I'm think you're lucky that you got a break, but I don't think that I'm not mad at you about it. I don't think you did it maliciously, obviously.
I've
So
never.
I see Ryan in the chat. I actually think I had a worse matchup against Chris than Chad did, and we didn't actually talk about the matchup, but I think I had slightly worse matchup. But it was close. I mean, in 2.0, it's not like 1.0. It was a close matchup for both of us.
I mean, we do have to recognize that like the meta mate concession is kind of a hallmark of DC's history, right? I mean, we can all just agree that is part
I mean,
of
if Chad had a big plus matchup, I would have scooped him.
Would you
should
have?
know
Well,
that.
you didn't know what the
Yes.
matchup
If
was.
I was allowed, if I asked Danny, and I was Lanny and Lanny. I knew it was Lanny and Lanny.
You could just
That's
play
Chad-
and wait
Chad
for
was
the
playing
other
Stark.
match to finish, and then when you see
Sorry.
who wins, you can just hey, good game, man.
Yeah. And I don't even say it to criticize. I just think it's part of the it's like part of the strategy, right? It's part of the team
Yeah,
approach.
It wouldn't
right?
be
Like,
a real American
go
tournament
ahead.
without DC scooping to a metamate.
Right.
Well,
Right.
look,
It would.
look,
it would feel
all-
strange.
all-
First
all
time
of-
in the
all
cut
of
where the
this-
DC has actually just not played
Yeah,
the game.
stop. All this is bullshit. Because going into the last round of the graduated cut, everyone was like, you know what? Whoever has the higher strength of schedule and is going to make this top 8, just go ahead. Like, I know at least 3 or 4 people who are just like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, if you're going to make the graduated cut, you've played better than me so far. You've got a higher strength of schedule.
Yeah, I mean both Seth and I got a concession in the Swiss rounds as well. Seth got a concession from Kid. I got a concession from you, Aaron. So I mean, it happens.
Like, so just like, if a lot of us do it, if you don't like it, fucking too bad. Like, honestly, people, like, if I can't win, I want one of my friends to win. If Chad felt like he couldn't win or was too burned out or too tired, or just didn't give a shit, he felt like his friend could win. And, you know, as usual, his friend came in second. So it was all worked out in the end.
I think
But
also the
life
fact that they
found
got
a
rid of
way
mod,
to kind of reestablish a balance. I agree with that. Yeah.
the fact that they got rid of mod losses though also encourages just straight up concessions, right? Because it actually hurts in the Swiss. It actually hurts your strength of schedule for your opponent to particularly in the early rounds, right? It hurt if you want to try to climb up from your first round loss. It hurts your strength of schedule for your opponent to have a mod win.
Yeah.
So it's best that if you go to time and you know even before Danny or anybody comes to start counting cards or whatever the fuck they're gonna do, just concede. Just be like, look, it's gonna help my strength schedule. If I'm gonna climb, that's awesome for both of us. And if I don't climb, then you know what, whatever. But then you can go off and do really well in the tournament, right? And that's what I did with Chad. Chad and I went to time. I barely had any power in my house card the whole time in the first round. I held him off, but we went to time. But instead of taking the mod win, I was like, nope, Chad, just take the full win. Like you outplayed me. I grinded you to time, but whatever. Like it's gonna help your strength schedule, and if I climb, it's gonna be good for me. I didn't climb, which is fine. Whatever. That's on me, not on Chad, right? So I think that it's sort of the problem if you're really concerned about these sort of scoop issues is the getting rid of the mod loss. So there's now much less of an incentive to just not scoop if you're going to lose.
But I think that's good. I think that's a net positive. I don't think that it's a bad thing that this is the world we live in. Like my first game of day 2 was against Nick, the Barra fealty player who made top 8 as well. And we were probably 10 minutes, 2 turns from time. And I said, look, this is a really tight game. It looks like we're probably not going to finish because we've both been playing pretty hard. And Barra takes its time getting there a lot of times if it doesn't have a renowned character on the board. I said, do you want to agree now, 10 minutes before the game ends, regardless of our board position, if it goes to time, the loser concedes and gives a full win. And he agreed, and that's what ended up happening is he only got to 13, and he freely agreed that if the game had finished, if the game hadn't gone to time, that I would have won because I completely turned it. But it went to time partially due to a mistake that I made. I'll admit that too. But I think that the mod loss situation serves as a further incentive to get people to draw the game out and go to time, as opposed to being a negative thing. So I'm glad mod losses are gone.
So the SoCal meta, they aren't dropping this, but it's a top 4 thing. It's a single elimination scoop.
Yeah, but didn't they just say that like the tiebreaker only mattered to in all these games? So like it doesn't matter enough. It's the exact same argument that they're making, except when it doesn't fit their side, they're going against it. And I'm going to pee, so have fun.
I think that's fundamentally untrue. I think it's just at the heart, it's a philosophical difference, and I wouldn't say it's consistent among all of SoCal, but in general, in general, SoCal would not scoop to SoCal. It just wouldn't happen. It would be an anomaly, a very high anomaly if it were to happen. And I think it's kind of just at the heart of at least the majority of our players. There are very few I can imagine would do that, especially in a top 4. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do it. I just think it's maybe one of the big differences between maybe our meta and the DC meta, of which there are many, but that would be one difference.
Okay, well, I'm going to push you a little bit, Sid. Okay, I understand not doing the Chad situation, which is in the top 4. Like, I think that's the first time that's actually happened with the DC guys, is like that you didn't play a game in the top 4. In
no comment.
Because you guys have knocked each other out before.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think that's the first time, Roy. You need to your history needs to go back further.
There has been DC dancing for sure. For sure.
DC dance, but they played a game in that situation. Right,
Yeah,
right.
they're
They played a
playing,
game,
but the game was
Well, did
already
they-
over when
Did
they
they
sat
play
down.
a game? Did they play a game?
though. Okay.
No.
Well, cards were shuffled and played on a table, right? That's normally a game, right? But anyway, my point is this. So, okay, excluding the top four situation, you're saying that in SoCal, so say in the final round of Swiss, one SoCal person who has no chance based on the schedule of making the cut, even if they win the game, and a SoCal person who does, if they win the game, has a chance, you wouldn't scoop.
I can tell you with 100% honesty that the majority of our guys would not scoop. They would say, "Let's play the game."
I'm not
And I-
convinced, to be honest
You're
with
not
you.
convinced, Chris? Has
No.
that ever happened in a tournament that you've played in SoCal among SoCal guys?
Yeah,
I'm not talking about in SoCal.
guys,
I'm talking about at
that's
Worlds,
stupid.
GenCon,
among
Origin,
SoCal
or
guys, it could never happen.
I mean, SoCal has been playing at Worlds a long time, and it's never happened.
I
I'm
don't
not
think
talking about
I don't think there's been a reasonable situation that's come up where it's been if that one player hasn't had a chance and the other player has, and the scoop hasn't happened. Like I would certainly scoop in that situation. So Dennis going into our last game was 5-3. I was 6-2, or not Dennis, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Ouch.
He's
Now
not here.
I want to take that shit back.
Hey,
Love you. But he said, I don't have a chance and you do. And I would do the same thing if the situations were reversed. That's just reasonable strategy. And I think and hope that, SoCal players in that situation would also see that is a reasonable strategy. I don't think that's the same situation as what happened in top four.
right. And I agree with that. I don't think I've certainly never been in that situation, and I can't think of an example of that situation happening. So I'm not sure, but I could say in general, SoCal is very much opposed to a concession, even to a meta-met. And I would say in a cut, it would never happen.
All right.
Sure.
So
I strongly agree with that. Yeah, in a
I'm
cut
going to
that
push Seth a little bit here. So what is the DC attitude towards this? Like, we're not beyond the wall. We're not the white book. Like, we're going to push you a little bit on this, Seth. So what is the DC
Give us the
attitude?
juice. Come on. Give
And
us
we
the
don't actually
towards this,
conversation.
and why does it happen? No. Why does it happen? And what's the DC Wausau attitude towards
Oh,
scooping?
shit. Wait. What something just important just happened in the chat. Buzz admits I'd give Holtman the win every time if it means a better matchup. In the cut.
Yeah, every time. For sure.
That's
Why
because the
not?
Swedish dudes
Without-
they know how
without-
to win.
Without
Well,
any...
I mean,
No,
there's-
Hultman would never do it. Never, ever, I think. But I would.
Look, it's a personal choice. I wouldn't demand
Jakob
it.
Jakob
No.
belongs in SoCal, I think.
All right. So, but let's
That's
get to
the
Seth.
true DC man. I think it's
People want to hear the DC perspective, not from Butzlaff, but from Seth, who can put it in a non-trolly way. So, what is the attitude of the Wisconsin DC guys about this? Like, what's the attitude you guys go into a tournament like GenCon or Worlds? And why
I
do
mean,
you
I
say
won't
that?
speak. I'll just speak for us, for like me and Aaron and Pat and Steve. I won't speak for the Wausau guys. They have their own beliefs. Obviously, so does all of our individual members. But mostly, it's just to win. I mean, it's best. Whoever gives you the chance to win, whoever gives you the best chance to win. That was definitely a part of it with Chad. Is he felt burnt out. He felt like he did not want to play our game. He was burnt out. So the expectation that he's going to grind with me and win, and then want to go and play this long, stressful final, he didn't want to do that. That was part of it. It's also part of just what's in the rules. It's one thing if it's cheating and we try and circumvent the rules, but Danny's right there. And we asked him before we did it, not after we did it, but we hadn't drawn cards. We asked him before. It wasn't cheating. So people feel like we've cheated the spirit of the game, but we don't feel like that. We feel like we observe the rules of the game, and it's just another step for us to try and win.
So I think what's really key there is the pronoun Seth was using. It was a win for us, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. For Thrones, for me, for Seth, for apparently Buzz, for Roy to an extent. I don't know. You've never come out strongly on this, so you're always a diplomat. So I gave you to an extent, but isn't us? It's about us winning. It's not necessarily about me winning. It's about us winning. And at the end of the day, like, part of the reason I scooped to Chris is I wanted one of us to win. And if one of my us wasn't going to win, then like a first player friend was going to win. And I told Seth that when I left, I was rooting for him too. Like I want someone I like to win if it's not going to be me. That's it.
Yeah, confirmed communists. Nice. But,
I'm 100% in team
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Number one, I want to win.
Un-American.
Then I want my build group to win, and then I want people I like to win, and then other
Yeah.
people. Like
the
in that
Swedish
order.
meta, when we go to Stalek, especially our team captain Pontus, he's always saying, "Okay, let's win today. We win today. Doesn't matter if he does bad. Team does good, right?" And everyone are so happy when the Swedes. Okay, so when the Swede makes the cut, it's not all of the Swedes. It's some Swedes, but everyone are equally happy. They're disappointed in themselves, of course, if they don't make the cut, but they're so happy afterwards for the other Swedes.
The chat is just I love the chat right now.
Yeah,
so
apparently I'm
so
more of an outlier
Cal
than-
is calling you out, guys. It's so good.
I mean, we've come to like a point where we really can't go any further.
Yeah. I think,
Except Heinz is gonna talk about a bunch of rules that no one cares about. So we can move on from that.
although we actually,
well, we have
Joe's
Alex as a
actually the
live
devil.
listener. I mean,
It's that would
Yeah,
be,
I love it.
the Joe's
Um,
actually the devil. That would be whatchamacallit, the podcast.
Joe Miranda.
Yeah, the shitty podcast.
Yeah, Brotherhood.
There we go.
No
I
one,
couldn't
no
think
one
of the
ever. Remember, this podcast is on the record for defending the collusion that the Brotherhood guys did. We just liked them for other reasons. Anyway,
I
so
think
then
I
let's
just
talk
want
about.
to point out though, some of the scooping stuff is overblown. Last year at Gen Con, I got knocked out by Aaron in the top 16.
Not me.
Steve
Brother.
got knocked out by Pat. Rick
Yep.
got knocked out by. I mean, everybody. We just all beat each other. There was no scheming or collusion. Like Steve, he had a design, but he was still going to take it down.
Dan knocked Aaron out last year in the Swiss of being able to make the cut. So
Yep. We
I don't
both-
think there's a grand conspiracy. I just happens.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
and if all other things are equal, then I agree that I wouldn't scoop. It's only in that very specific case where I don't have a chance and they do that I'm interested in it, and that speaks a lot to what Andreas was saying earlier.
Here's maybe you guys will believe me, maybe you won't, but there's a situation where I will give scoop to Chris if I was playing him in the top 4. If there was a matchup on the other side and it was like two guys who never play 1.0 or who I didn't like. Not that there's people who don't play 1.0 who I don't like, but let's say it's just people I'm like, I do not want these people to win. And I'm looking at his deck and I'm like, man, this could be a big win for this portion of the community. I would have scooped him. If it was a big matchup difference, if it was like, I can't win this, but he can.
So
Well,
now we're
think you-
confirming 1.0 elitism. I love
Yes.
I am
Oh,
a
no, yeah.
1.0
Oh, are you
elitist.
kidding? Yeah, we're,
yeah.
we're all 1.0
I think
elitists.
I think this
it on
is-
some
yeah.
level. I'm a CCG elitist. Screw you guys.
And I wouldn't be happy with that, but I absolutely believe you, Seth, like 100%.
All right, so let's go to the last controversy so we can get to the sort of puppies and unicorns section, which is the amazing game that Seth and Chris played, which is Seth's refusal to be recorded in the final game. So the most we've gotten out of Seth about this is Seth through Simone's phone. So Seth, why?
Wait, did he really get that? I
What?
That's so
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah,
fantastic.
Seth was posting on Simone's Facebook
Please,
account.
Oh
Yeah.
man, why would you
Yeah.
ever let? Okay, go ahead.
So Seth, why didn't you want to be recorded? And so what like that probably is actually more controversial in many ways, thanks to our friend and the guy who drove Aaron and I to GenCon, Dennis Harrison,
Who Chris thinks
formerly
is
DC
me.
Dennis. What was the logic that you had behind not wanting to be recorded in that final match?
A couple reasons, mostly just anxiety. I won't really get into it, but I just didn't want to be recorded, especially after last year at Worlds. That was basically it. And so the way it went down, the story of how it went down is I asked Danny, I explained to him, I said, I don't want to be recorded. These are the reasons. He said, I think that'll be fine. This is while Chris is still playing the top 4 game. So then he goes and asks Zach, who was, I guess, kind of running at a higher level all the FFG events at Gen Con, that he comes back and says, yep, that's totally fine. You don't need to be recorded. So I've got permission to nix all the recording prior to the conclusion of the top 4 game. The team...
Here on a point of order, FFG was not the ones doing the recording. This was not an official recording. This was Rob and this was Dennis. So this is I'm interested to see going forward, like if this happens again at Worlds, is FFG still going to be okay with you not being on camera?
I have no idea. I mean, I asked them. I assume they were the source of permission, and they were the ones who would say yes or no. I mean, there's no way Dennis could do it if we don't want to, right? So,
Of course.
I think Worlds is different. When we all buy our tickets for Worlds, I think it specifically says
It
there,
is.
you agree to have your image and likeness and video in their media. So I think that would be a different situation. Yeah.
Not at Gen Con. You don't do that at Gen Con.
Right.
Sure.
So
Although you
Seth,
do
what
for the
Oh, go
Gen
ahead,
Con
Chris.
itself, the badge says on the back that you agree to be recorded.
for
Oh.
Gen Con's purposes,
I
but not
know.
for FFG's purposes.
Got it.
So Seth, but what was it about the World's experience that you didn't like that led to you like, let's push a little further than, since Alex is in there, than Alex would if you were on Beyond the Wall right now. So what about Worlds being recorded? Because you were recorded like 9 times.
I feel like I should be undergoing hypnosis here, man.
Yeah. So what was it like?
The key word you said was anxiety. I want to know the source. Is that intra meta anxiety? Does DC abuse you, Seth? When
No,
you
I
lose a
mean,
match
do you
like
feel
that?
like you didn't play as well because your match because I watched you on a recorded match beat Kaiser and beat Bamford and then not be able to meet Jakob. But I mean, Jakob,
but who
rather.
can?
Like, I mean, yeah. Like, so what do you think? What was it about that World's experience that sort of led into you not wanting to be recorded at Gen Con?
I will decline that question. I don't want to get into it. I mean, it's personal. But I didn't want to be recorded. But I don't think it matters. I could have won it for any reason. But I went to FFG and got the permission directly from the people running and organizing the event beforehand.
So
That's what I would say.
I have a question from you from Death Jester 26, who clearly made that screen name when he was 16.
You don't know who that is?
From the
Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do. Had the game been recorded, how many more cat memes would we have? And did that play into the decision to not be recorded?
Cat memes was that? I
No,
feel like
there are
not
many
at all?
cat memes. Eric makes those cat memes. There are many cat memes you guys have never seen. There was one from last year that said it was one of his cats at the table and me there, and it says, "Train super duper hard this time, still scrubs out in top 16," and it's me like holding a glass. And then he had to get rid of that one once I made the final.
So, throw it out to the boys before we talk about the final game more generally. So, what do we think
with the
about?
video stuff? Can I just wrap it up? So,
Of course,
so
Seth.
what actually happened though is, so I'm thinking there's going to be no recording. It's not going to be done. And then Chris finishes his game. He takes his time. I go to him and I say, "Hey, Chris, I talked to FFG. I told them I do not want to be recorded. They said that's fine. They're not going to record it." And then Chris said, and stop me here if I'm getting it wrong, Chris said, "Well, I would like it at least for my personal use. So can we record the game and not have it publicly posted, but just sent to me?" So
That's correct.
I would frame it basically, I mean, I could have told him no there, and I have FFG supporting me. They already told me I don't have to be recorded. But I get it. I get why he wants that. It's his right. I mean, he's in the final. I sympathize with it. So I say, yeah, that's fine. So I really want to thank Rob St. John also, because he was nice enough to record that game. And I want to email him and send him a thanks as well. He was nice enough to record it, but not for his normal use, which is to put it up on his YouTube channel, which is why he brought his equipment, but just for Chris's benefit and my benefit, respecting my wishes. So that was really cool. But I also think it was ridiculous afterwards. All these people are saying he didn't want to be recorded so he could cheat. But I was recorded. I elected to be recorded once I already had the option to not be recorded at all.
Sure.
Yep, that's totally legit. Anyone who thinks that Seth cheated in that game can go fuck themselves.
So do you have anything to say
I,
to...
I watched it last night, to be honest with you, and there was obviously nothing there, and I wouldn't expect there to be.
Seth, do you have anything to say to Dennis about this?
Nothing to say to Dennis.
Oh.
All right, well then we can get to the sort of the stunts and flowers parts of this. So, which one of you two guys wants to talk first about sort of the game that really amazing? Which, by the way, I just want to put the context to people who aren't there. So the second round of Star Wars started, and their final started, and then the fifth round of Star Wars ended, and their final was still going. Like
So I got the
how long
video
it was.
from Rob. I got the video from Rob last night, and it comes in at 1 hour and 56 minutes. So if we had followed the strict timing of the new tournament guide, we would have been less than 4 minutes from actually going to time the final.
Perfect.
Wow.
So which one of you gentlemen wants to sort of give the game from their perspective first? I'll let you choose.
Second
ahead.
place. Second place needs to go
Okay,
first
cool.
sometime.
Sure. I played really well all day. and the day before, I didn't play very well in the final. I think that was a big reason Chris won. So I'll make a couple points, and I want to see if Chris agrees. One, I think the matchup was probably a slight plus for him. Two, I think I should have won based on the cards we saw. And three, I think that Treachery was probably the most important card for him to see. He did see 3, but overall his luck was below mine. But he did see those. Those were crucial cards that he did see. So yeah, I mean, I should have probably won the game. If we both played perfectly or equally well, I think I probably should have won, just based on the way things started and having a leg up. But that's what happened.
Yeah, I don't think I would disagree in principle with any of those main points. I'm not sure on the matchup because I haven't played against Martel Wolf a lot. If I'd played against it more and knew more of the exact contents and what it was trying to do, I probably would have felt better about the matchup. But overall, you might be right that I have a little bit of an advantage there. I certainly agree that I definitely drew worse than you. I mean, I never saw Ty win the entire game. But you're right that the treachery draws were important, but I mean that's a feature, not a bug. Like our deck had 3 treachery and 2 nightmares, so we wanted as much of that effect as we could possibly get. And so the fact that I got it just means we built our deck right.
Yeah, I agree. I don't begrudge you for that at all. I think there are a couple things about your deck that I really liked. I mean, I told you this. I really liked that you went with Wildfire and did not play March or First Snow. I think you were playing for the floor, which is the way we would have played it. Yeah, so I mean, I thought that was part of the reason you deserved it, is the way you built your deck to try and win, to try and play skillful games.
So I've got a random thought. Second Son's thought. Would you two send Second Sons, no one else, the video of the game, and we'll do a live Second Sons commentary on the game, but not share it with anyone?
I would enjoy watching that personally. I'll leave up to Seth, but I would definitely enjoy watching that.
Seth? We won't call everything.
I'll think about it.
Because that shit would be fun. And then everyone will ask us for it, and we'll just laugh in everyone's face. I have a question for Ryan.
It'll be like the Zapruder film. It'll just be this thing.
Oh man,
that only us could have.
Yeah, I'll delete it. I'll fucking get it right off the computer.
Is the back and to the left? Is that discard Kings Road? Deploy the hounds. Discard Kings Road, deploy the hounds.
We won't be that specific. We'll just be like, oh man, what a fucking great play! I can't believe he fucking didn't get that put to the sword off or whatever. But Agot Ryan would like to know how confident you were that you could close with Dom and the Boneway the turn you pushed.
I knew he could cancel. I mean, it was clear we were stopped. Like, yeah, I mean, I have the 6 tokens. He's not going to, like, his demeanor would have been different, even if he would have let me trigger to get to 15. So I knew he was going to cancel it. I still thought I was ahead. Really, that's a turn I lost the game because I didn't go second. I went first. And I was trying to figure out what I was thinking to go first there. And I don't really have a good reason.
Let's be clear. And I said this during the game, and I thought I'd said it, and I confirmed it when I rewatched the game. If I don't have the treachery there, I'm not doing all those challenges.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm not going to give you Boneway triggers if it loses me the game. Like,
yeah, that seems silly.
Chris, you had both Nightmares and the Boneway in your hand, right?
Nightmares and Treachery, you mean?
At the end.
Treachery, yeah.
The last turn, yes, I had both effects.
Yeah.
So the Boneway is the single least DC card ever. I would just like to put that out there.
Yeah,
and I'm really impressed that was run.
Actually, that was actually another question that Dave had. Like, Seth, what was the logic behind including the Boneway in your build of Martel Wolf? Was it sort of the rush potential, or what? Well, what was it that made that sort of card work?
No, it was just a hard card to answer. It was part of the. I mean, we play a control deck. It wasn't a kill deck. It wasn't a targeted removal deck. It wasn't a get him to 0 deck. It was really one of the only ones in the whole field that was trying to do kind of what it was trying to do, and part of it was just trapping people between control effects and the Boneway. So, like, I had some games earlier where people didn't realize the game was over, and they're challenging me intrigue, and I'll block with a traitor I lose, and they discard a card, but I trigger the Boneway, and I'm ahead, and they just haven't realized yet that they're trapped, and that it's over, and they're trying to make their plays to get back into the game, but the Boneway is part of what locks it down.
We talked about crushing noobs. A deck needs to win against bad players even when your deck isn't performing that well. And Boneway is such a great card against beginners because they have no idea how to play against it. You just instantly win, and it's great. I love the Bone.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan too.
Yeah, I think new players, as soon as you start letting challenges through and you have the Boneway, it's like they smell blood in the water and they just keep going. They're just like, and this, and this, and this, and you just stack them up, and then all of a sudden, you've triggered it twice, and they're just like, oh, I'm behind, 12-8. What happened? And yeah, I think it's a card that really fleshes out. I think a skilled player. I think it's a perfect DC card. Like Seth said, it traps you. Like it puts you in a situation where you can't win if you've controlled the board enough. Because the only way to overcome Boneway and win is to just win every challenge all the time and unopposed challenges. Like Seth said, if you oppose and they're just getting a card, they're not getting any closer to their win condition, and you are with that Boneway, and you can kind of leverage that over them, even if they're kind of winning challenges. So I think it's a great kind of strategic card, and DC, among other things, is known for their strategy, and I thought it was a great play. I mean, I think Boneway is a good card.
Well, I'd like to talk about the meta and decks, but first, can we kind of close this loop and have Chris finish about the game itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris,
what else would you like me to talk about? I guess I would start by saying I concur with your statement that you probably lost the game on the turn that I played trading.
And I played March.
And you played March, yeah. Because that turn you knelt out, and I got from, I think it was 12-2 at the start of that turn, and it ended the turn like 11-9 or something like that. And that was really the turn where the door just reopened for me. The 2-claim plot that didn't hurt, but I didn't do a lot on the 2-claim turn. So I definitely agree with you there that was a tough turn. I do think my board that turn was pretty good, but the unopposed power was really what kind of reopened the door for me. Obviously, I made, you said you didn't play good. I certainly didn't play that well myself. I missed, I think I saw 2 Tyrion triggers on the replay.
Yeah, I saw you missing them. Your buddy behind you was not pleased.
Yeah. No, that was just so dumb. I couldn't believe it. And both times I was like, I can't believe I missed that. And then there was the one, Buzz, now would be the time to queue up the picture that Seth sent you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So yeah, I missed a Jorah Renown. And then I also, obviously, marshaling the Hound was clearly the biggest blunder. Dave Moran, the guy who was sending the Discord play-by-play back to SoCal, showed me the chat logs for Discord. And the chat logs after I marshaled the Hound were like, wait, what did he do? Why did he do that? Like, I was sitting on 8 gold. There was literally no reason for me to, other than just pure absurdity. Like, looking back on it, no idea what I was doing.
Would you tell everyone what happened? Because we
Yeah, Seth, what did you do after you marshaled
I'd assume
marshaled the Hound, and I crunched on him. I warded the Hound.
It was on. It was on his. I think it was his trading turn. So I had just millions and millions of gold. I had 10 gold, and my play was, and I was going first. My play was King's Road, marshal the Hound for some reason, and he immediately snaps off a ward on the Hound and goes, "You're going to regret this," and I absolutely did. The interesting thing that turn was I had Ill and Pain on the board, and he warded the Hound and then immediately said, "Let's go to challenges." And I said, "No, I have an action after you play ward." And I tanked. I looked on the video. I tanked for 8 minutes there on what to do because I had a duplicate Hound in my hand at that point. So if I kill my Hound, I just killed a card in my hand as well. And I ended up not killing the Hound there. I ended up killing my own, or killing his Dane Knight that had a power from Eddard earlier in the game. And I think that was, obviously, looking back on it, was clearly the right play. Because even though he wards the Hound, it's stuck it's stuck where it's at. Like he either has to march it off the board, which he ended up doing, but he can't really use it for challenges, or he just gives it back because he doesn't have any cards in hand to discard to his trigger. But that was obviously just a horrible misplay on my part, and I'm very fortunate that I was able to dig out of it.
So the funny thing is, I actually wanted you to Illimpain the Hound, and the reason I said that and tried to rush you, I knew you were not going to be rushed. So I was hoping you would like snap react back and crunch on the Hound with Illan and leave me with the power on my little dude. So I tried some next level stuff there, but it did not work.
Chris, can I ask a question about your deck? Why were you running Mance?
Oh, you're in that? Good, thanks.
Mance is a delight, to be quite honest with you. So he was almost vestigial to some degree. Our earlier build from it. I don't want to talk too much about this because I'm stealing from a Johnny Wright White Book article that's going to go up later in the week. But
He's excited about that one.
The build immediately before it had multiple winter plots, had a second Mance, and had a third Wildling Scout. And it was a little heavier on that tech, but the winter plots obviously help counteract Winterfell. Mance is another body. But really, I was so happy to have him in that deck. He overloads the Martell icon removal so much because he's another Tricon that you have to deal with, which is just crazy difficult. And he's just another big body with Renown to help close the game. So I think 1 is the right number. I don't think I would go more than that, but I wasn't unhappy to have him in there.
Can someone explain the picture to me?
Oh, so the picture was basically early in the game. My board was absolute garbage. It was like Tyrion, 3 reducers, and Jorah. And I blocked a challenge with Jorah, and we moved along in the turn, and then Seth casually later in the turn points out that I missed Renown. So of course I try and put Renown on it. And he goes,
So it was actually Danny. Danny was the one. He says you missed the force.
No. You pointed out to him, to me.
Oh, did I?
You missed the Renown, and I tried to put the Renown on, and you said, "Wait, isn't Renown optional?" And
yeah, Renown is optional in 2nd edition, so.
And then, but he still had to trigger his force reaction to get the token because that is not optional. So
I thought Danny brought up the force reaction. I'm pretty sure Danny said you missed the forced, and then you were like, "Oh, I used Renown."
He's got the video.
We'll see, yeah. But either way, it was pretty funny because
it was funny because later in the game, Jorah was still out, and I very carefully claimed Renown on him. It was fun.
So, were you running any winter plots?
Yeah, I had Winds of Winter in there, and that was my only winter plot, and it was very good all day.
So why Winds of Winter over the Long Winter?
That's a Johnny Wright question. You're stealing from his article. He's gonna fucking cut you.
I got the champ here.
It's not a Johnny Wright question. Long Winter's a garbage plot. It's so bad. Like the benefits that it gives you, the 1 extra gold, don't outweigh the fact that you're fucking your own power, and the reserve on it is garbage, and so is the initiative for that matter. Like the 4 initiative is so much better. I'd rather have that all day than the 1 extra gold.
Okay.
Chris is right. That's all I have to say.
SoCal solidarity. They won't scoop, but they'll deck building solidarity.
I'll never play any winter plot, any 2-claim winter plot, unless they give it higher initiative than 4. Because why would you? It's good.
So there's a story behind that Jorah play, which I'll tell you, Chris.
Pointed out 100%. So.
That Danny pointed out? Yeah, because that's what I thought. Because I thought the way it happened is Danny says you missed the force, and then Chris is like, "Oh, I used the Renown and the force together. Let me put it on." And then I cut in. I was like, "Whoa! You can take that force, but you're not taking the Renown."
Fair enough.
But the reason I did that, well, 1, because I could foresee an end to the game where you have 2 Renown on Jorah and I lose. And I didn't want that to happen. And 2, because in the draft last year, in the top 8, I played James Spec. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. And before the game, he gave me this talk like, "Hey, this is a world championship event, so we're going to play it tight. Like if I kneel this card in marshaling and then it reduces this guy, that all still counts." And I'm like, "Okay, man, sure. All right, we'll do it like that." And then afterwards, I sort of got this impression that that's SoCal's thing. They're really big on in tournament play, playing really tight, follow all the little rules. So I was like, no, I'm going to get him.
You're absolutely correct to do that. I when you watch the video, I may seem a little frustrated, but it's more frustration in myself than that. And I apologize to Danny later because I think I made some comment like, "Oh, Well, I guess if that's your ruling, but it was absolutely the correct ruling, and I apologize to him about that. So
No, you were fine. You were fine. It was just funny to bring it back around full circle.
it was bring it back around later to give him the round out, and then I believe immediately claim him when you did a military back was just great.
All right.
All right. Any lingering controversies about the joust?
Not about the joust. We have to go into melee controversy.
Ooh, melee.
Well, I have more joust stuff I was going to talk about.
Do you?
All
Go
right,
for it. Go for it.
Bring it,
We want-
yes.
The joust is what people want. So.
So I was going to say I thought it was an interesting final matchup because it was really a meta and a tournament of primarily big dude decks, so lots of big guys, and then a few decks trying to prey on big guys. So ours was one trying to beat up on big guy decks with cards like Gaston, Wildfire, Icon Strip, Milk, the Boneway, and Kevin Shees with another one in top 8. He had Varus, and that was an awesome deck. I loved his deck. And then the Night's Watch one as well that a bunch of the
Sam's
Wallside
deck.
guys were playing. And I think that the meta is really built for the big guy decks to be better. They're a little bit better. But the reason I gave the reason before I didn't want to play them, I thought people were more practiced against them. And I thought it was fitting to have a big dude deck and then a non-big dude deck come together in the finals. And just the fact that I could have won that game points out that it could have been done, maybe not by me in that situation, but it could have been done by a non-big guy deck.
Well, if Chad didn't scoop, it would have been a big guy deck against a big guy deck in the final. So really,
Maybe.
Oh.
sorry, I didn't throw shade in a while. Had to. Good.
I had a point, but the beer has made me slip it. So what did we learn from Gen Con, basically, I guess would be the key here. So going out of Gen Con, what can we sort of say about the first year of second edition? Sort of, is the big guy deck dominant, or is the fact that Seth was able to make the final table with a sort of answer deck to that sort of thing a sign of good things to come? Like, is Lanny Dragon our future, or are we going to be able to see more interesting builds like, you know, Sam Bratz's deck, which is really fucking interesting, Night's Watch Lion Choke deck, or the Martel Wolf, or are we going to see the sort of other DC deck, which was a fucking big guy Stark, as someone who lost to it, I lost to Chaz deck, a big guy Stark murder things deck? Like, is the future Lanny Dragon and Stark big guys, or is it Sam's choke deck and Seth's control Martel Wolf?
So I would actually set that question aside, and the reason I would is because of Valar coming out, and nobody really knows how Valar is going to interact with this game. I mean, we all have guesses, but it's just kind of speculation. So I think we'll have to wait and see. But I do think that the first year of this game, it's been flawed, and we all know that. I mean, Steve and Chad from My Meta they both had one of their 2 losses from mulliganing into one character and having it marched. I mean, that's not good. You don't want to, I mean, our deck was built a little bit to try and not have that happen, and they're good players, but like they couldn't come back from that because of what was available in the card pool. And that's not a good tournament game. And I think it will get better. And if it doesn't, I don't know if I'll be playing any other year. Because it could happen to me or Chris just as easily.
No, I completely agree with Seth on that. I mean, I felt that way since it came out. The War of the Five Kings tournament at Worlds last year, I had 2 losses, and both of them were to that exact scenario, like mulligan into one card, got it marched, and one of them was against Andreas. So I think he probably remembers that pretty well. Too.
What?
Here
I
it
was
is,
watching the
baby.
Dota. What were you talking about?
About one of your wins at Worlds against
One
Chris.
of my 2 losses in the War of the Five Kings was to your Targ Tyrell marching my one guy first turn. So it happened both the games I lost, and I was out by that point. So it certainly can still happen. I agree with Seth that it's gonna kind of equalize, and Valor's gonna make things different. And we have a whole box coming out pretty soon, so that'll kind of throw the meta up in the air a little bit, hopefully. Maybe not in terms of the house cards, but at least in terms of the cards we see. People were talking a lot this weekend about whether winter and summer, the new agendas, would do anything. And to me, whether or not they actually are, the top decks is kind of immaterial. I like that they both provide new mono house options so people can start playing one house reasonably and not have to build around crossing. Because crossing, obviously, you have to build your deck in a specific way. You have to play in a specific way that you're not getting screwed by the downside and you're maximizing the benefits. These are sort of more deck building agendas, and I think that'll be good for the game when those get in there.
Yeah, I have less confidence than you guys. I'd like to think that's going to happen. I think the card we need is actually the draft reset, but I think I'm all about the Pale Mare. The Pale Mare is life.
We'll talk about draft in a little bit.
I'm not talking about draft. I'm talking about Joust. The Pale Mare
right.
needs to be a Joust card.
Right.
Joust only.
Joust format only. So, I mean, this also actually brings us to another controversy, this sort of 2.0, which is sort of in the graduated cut, right? Dark Naj had, so he was schooling our national champion Nate, and then Tarantelli, yeah, and then he won a military challenge with Gregor, and no put to the sword, no nothing, but he pulled off the top of his deck.
Stop using pronouns.
Excuse me. Nate pulled off the top of John's deck. Excuse me, a copy of Gregor, which killed a Tywin that had 4 power on him and totally swung the game in Nate's favor. At the end of the game, which Nate won, he scooped to John and said that I don't want to win a game based entirely on the randomness of the top card of my deck, or John's deck in that case. Which was, I think, a pretty interesting decision, and I think it shows sort of where a lot of 1.0 players are feeling about sort of the state of the game at the end of GenCon. Other thoughts?
It's
I
an
like this
honorable
Tarantelli
move.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone up in my estimation now. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's great, but I mean, I don't think I would see myself doing that at any point.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that either.
I'm wondering if there's a situation maybe where Nate knew he couldn't make the cut because his strength of schedule wasn't high, and John could, and he was like, you know what, I don't want to win a game that way and eliminate both of us for no reason.
Yeah.
Nate had 2 losses at that point, so he would have been on the bubble. That was his 3rd loss. That was his eliminating loss.
Several of my games in Paris, and I've said this before, was decided by my Gregor slaughtering the opponent's board. I mean, both the top 4, the top 8, the last round of Swiss, all of them was just Gregor winning by himself.
That's what he does sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in test games that we had where Aaron and I were playing, Gregor swung 4 or 5 games. So
Gregor is really, really fun against Stark. They're like, I run 18 6 costers. It's like, well, I've got just the thing for that.
So parting Joust thoughts, folks.
Yeah. The Pale Mare would have made that whole tournament a million times better.
Right. We'll get to draft in a little bit.
I'll say the fact that the finals was what it was, 2 kind of battling archetypes right now, and I think the big guy archetype is still on top, but the fact that it was challenged, I think, throughout the tournament, and that in fact Lannister, I know the day 2 was a huge swath of Lannister players, but the top 8 was not dominated by Lannister. It had a pretty good representation. There was a Barrett in there, right? A couple Martells, couple Lannister. I'm
Stark.
Getting a couple Stark, right?
Stark, 2 Stark, 1 Martell, 1 Barra, and 4 Lannister.
There were 2 Martell.
Oh, 2 Martell.
Yeah,
2
2
Martell.
Martell. So maybe 3 Lannister.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Kevin was in there.
That's a good balance. Yeah.
I thought that was better than I expected. I won't say it's a perfect balance because obviously some houses aren't in there at all. But it's definitely better than I expected, and the fact that the final matchup was what it was, I think that's a plus going forward. I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I was crunching
so-
on Lannister all day. I was doing my best.
That's right.
I feel like I still don't know exactly why. There just wasn't enough Stark at the tournament, given how good it is.
There never is.
Like,
I was,
but
I was
yeah,
surprised too.
I figured people were hiding it for Gen Con. Like, that was my logic. There wasn't enough
I
Stark.
thought you were, for that matter, Aaron.
Yeah. Oh no, Stark. We had a Stark field team and Lane Dragon that like nothing could beat, and we were just like, "Fuck, someone's got an answer for this." No, apparently not. We just outthought ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, we they were our top decks at Dance, and we were just like, the meta has to evolve somehow. Like, someone had 3 months and figured something out. But yeah, here we are. Like,
Here we
oops,
are.
my bad.
I wasn't
Oh.
too worried about Stark decks. I had some stuff for some Stark decks. That was not the big problem. Definitely, there were other
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, Ward is probably the best answer to Stark decks, which is definitely not how that's supposed to work. But here we are.
So
Yeah,
funny story, funny little
oh.
anecdote.
Okay, wait. Sorry,
my-
one quick Stark deck thought. Put back in a time for Wolves. If you're playing Stark, put back in a time for Wolves. Go ahead.
So my round 7 opponent was a Stark deck, and he super overextended. I hit him with a wildfire, and his draw on the turn that I wildfired was so the board was his Blackfish with Lady on it. It was Sansa, and it was some random character, maybe a Rattleshirts Raiders or something. So my Gregor, Miri, and Tyrion. So I feel like I've got that game kind of in hand. And his top deck that turn is Summer to get Bran back that was killed by the wildfire, Milk for Miri, and he just kind of ran away with it from there. So I was like, you couldn't have gone through your deck and pulled out 2 better cards. So that was the one that I kind of chalked up to like, good job 2.0. But then when we paired into the cut, initially I was paired against the Barra Fealty player that I played in round 7. But then I believe Josh dropped to go play Star Wars for some reason, which actually ended up turning into a great decision because I believe he won Star Wars. But the Stark player then was paired against me, and he apparently was very excited when talking to his buddies. And then I just smashed him into the ground. It was fun. So,
Meanwhile, I was playing against Kevin Shee in a very unfun game where it was tight. That was a rough one.
I bet that was a grinder.
Every
Yeah,
game
it
against
definitely
Kevin
was.
She's a grinder.
He had a sweet deck. I think also in Joust, it's a little interesting to me that we had a pretty small crew this year. We really kind of wrote off this year at DC anyway. We did because of the nature of the game, and just we knew certain people weren't going to be able to come to the big tournaments. So we knew this wasn't going to be a big year for us. And then you guys as well from SoCal, just a couple of you, wasn't as big a crew as usual, and yet there we were in the finals. So I thought that was cool. It was kind of like house money. We definitely didn't expect any of us to be there in the finals based on the time we put in and how we felt about the game.
For sure, yeah, and I felt the same way, to be honest. Like I said, I decided about a month before that I was coming, and GenCon's not since 2012, the year when we brought everybody. GenCon hasn't been a big event for us. I've personally finished well there before, but really we haven't brought that many people any of those years, just because most of our players said it's GenCon or Worlds, and they would clearly rather do Worlds, which is a completely reasonable decision.
Bad decision.
So
You don't get Luke dancing at Worlds.
True, it's true. There's less karaoke at Worlds.
So Chris, I don't know if you want to say it or you want me to say it, but where were the 2.0 metas? Where were all these? Where was the Brotherhood? Where were they at?
I'll let you do the honors there.
No, well, I guess I just said it, but I mean, I actually kind of figured that some of the main 2.0 players were going to be beyond where we were, just based on time put in.
Sure. But yeah, it didn't. Go ahead.
Were there any 2.0 players in the cut, like pure 2.0 players?
I believe. Well, like I said, the guy I played in top 4, John Palmer, definitely
yeah.
a 2.0 player.
Yeah, he's
but
one of them.
he's very good at 2.0, so I expect to see him back in cuts going forward, because he said he liked the game enough to stick with it even after L5R comes out.
So we've covered Joust, which is cute and all, but now we get to the good stuff. It's Melee, and I've heard there's a controversy here. Can someone tell me
Is there?
about it? It sounds
yeah.
Roy said so, and
I
he's
did.
switching to the phone.
So, like it was announced way back when they first announced everything that Melee was getting a card design. It was in the original post. Like I was being forced to play Melee, and then a week before Thrones, we start getting conflicting rumors, and we have to call FFG and then tweet at them to find out that there's no fucking card design after all the Melee prep. And hey, someone in our group won Melee and overall, and there's no fucking card design, and he's too nice to say it, so I will. What the fuck? A week before you're gonna cut the card design?
Thus continues the belittlement of Melee players in America.
No,
right?
no. If you don't want a card design, that's totally fine. Like you don't have to have a card design for anything you don't want to. But
Just don't pull the
fucking,
rug out from under people.
yeah, just say it. Like like we had to fucking contact them to find out.
I missed it, Aaron. I didn't think there was ever going to be an overall or a Melee card design.
There was never
Chris,
supposed to be.
what'd you guys
Me
think?
neither.
There was never
Yeah,
supposed to be overall, but they definitely posted that there was going to be a Melee card design because John found us the fucking link. He was like, it was here. I assumed it. They posted it on Beyond the Wall at some point. So like people practiced Melee. People gave a shit about Melee, and then a week before, I was like, fuck that. I'm not using my ticket. But like, what a waste. Why?
I mean, I file this under disappointing but not surprising.
Yeah.
Fool me 30 times. I know.
I feel like they've never done this particular one before. They've never been like card design. No, we never said that.
They did that to Stalik until Stalik like pressured them into giving it back, didn't they?
Yeah, that's very true.
We got the Joust one back, but not for Melee. So Ryback, who won last year, doesn't have a card design. It required a lot of pressuring to get it back. So
I'm glad they did.
Yeah, I was in that group. The million people Stalik group. Ugh.
Not surprised.
Roy, I'm sorry, man. You're killing us, dude.
Roy with his sideways.
Sideways, Roy.
Sideways, Roy.
It's cast
Is this better?
There you go, Roy. There you go.
Hey, hold
well,
on.
it's
let me
worse for his stream, but
Oh,
sure.
good for the Skype channel. Okay, my bad.
Now we can't hear you.
Yeah, his mic is off.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Wouldn't be Second Sons
Yeah.
without us fucking up some technically somehow.
So,
All right, is that better?
Can we
you
talk
hear me?
about the deck that won Melee? I was pretty impressed to see Tyrell, Lord of the Crossing, take down the Melee tournament. It was nice to see a house that people have been kind of crapping on for a while. Do something at least in a different format, yes, but have a really good result, and a skilled player decides to take it to a tournament, kind of like Greg Atkinson and Sam Bratz taking Night's Watch to the Joust. So I think it shows that there's hope for those houses that are kind of down on their luck, and maybe people feel like FFG hasn't really given a fair shake to because they don't understand the dynamics of those houses quite as well as the established six.
Yeah, I mean, didn't that happen in First Edition all the time? Like when Targ was shitty and Dragons and ruled Melee, and when Barra was shitty and Barra ruled Melee? Like, it's such a different format that what's good in one doesn't necessarily carry over to the other.
Unless it's
Yeah.
Greyjoy. I hear that's really good in both.
You can
in fact,
actually
play the same
not
deck
a-
in both.
No. Like Greyjoy underperformed consistently for people in the melee at GenCon. Like I was never afraid of a single Greyjoy player that I faced. Neither was Naj, and neither were most people. Like Greyjoy really underperformed.
I mean, in First Edition, he was saying that there wasn't often in First Edition a deck that did well in both, but Greyjoy Holy is definitely that deck.
Yeah, I lost to that. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
All right. Anything else about Melee, or are we going to move on to Aaron's favorite topic in the world?
We
No, I
did talk
just-
about
all
how
I
John
wanna say
didn't get a
about
trophy,
Melee-
right?
Yeah, we did that. Not
I want to
trophy.
say
Fuck a
about
trophy.
Melee.
That was shitty.
What did he get? What did Dark
Nothing
Notch
special.
receive?
I don't
Nothing.
Just a pat on the back. Like,
Oh,
nice
FFG
job.
also didn't even bother mentioning him in their tweet of Thrones
Yeah,
winners.
here is the player that won Melee.
I mean, it's a side event in name too now, right? I mean, they've
Yeah, but
fully
that's not how they.
relegated it.
That's not how they sold the tickets. I didn't get my money back because it went from a world championship to a side event.
Oh,
or
no, of course
Roy's
not.
money
Get
back.
my money.
Right.
Of course not.
You didn't get
Um,
Of course not.
It was still listed as the North American Melee Championship, not North American Melee side event, which the Worlds is legitimately just straightforward side events, not listed as a championship at all.
Right.
So,
But isn't that a telltale sign that at Worlds it's less of a title than at the North American Championship? I mean, red flags, guys. Red flags.
Yeah. Still an awesome format, though, guys.
I have bad news, SoCal. I'm pretty sure we'll see the resurgence of Melee at Worlds next year. Once we have a
2017?
separate,
Alright.
once we separate from Star Wars, my hope is that we'll have again draft championship with design, joust with design,
Yeah.
and Melee with design. If
So
for no
we
other
also-
reason than it gives us a reason to be there over multiple days.
Yeah.
I don't want to launch into a criticism of Worlds this year right now, but I'm hoping we can just pressure them and be like, make this an awesome event.
Yeah,
We all
I-
want this.
I
Seth,
agree.
I actually hope you're right. I mean, SoCal gets a lot of flack because
No,
we
I was
do-
joking. I know you guys. will.
No, we do hate Melee. Like, most of us do hate the format. It is true. But I don't think any of us would begrudge the card design. And in fact, I was disappointed that it went away because I like that my friends like Melee. I think it can be a great game. I used to actually play it a lot back in the CCG and early first edition days. It just kind of faded out of my preference, but I think it sucks that it's gone because it means we lose players. It means we lose prestige at our big World Championship weekends. It means it's less important the number of tournaments that we have. I mean, to me, this World it's joust and everything else is a side event, and that's literally true. And it's sad. I mean, I'm sad that I'm only going to be there 2.5 days. But why would I stay longer for for side events? It's just not worth it.
Because draft is fucking amazing.
Yeah, and I'll be there for
no,
draft.
you
No,
have
I'll
played
be there for
Sigma stuff?
draft.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll
You
be
should
there for
not miss
draft
second different
on
draft.
Thursday because draft is Thursday, and then it's Melee and nothing. So yeah, I'm out.
So
I'm out.
I don't think Melee ever comes back for two reasons. First, they don't want to give away too many card designs, and if they're going to push one side tournament, it's going to be draft because that makes them more money. So they can push one of the two without like going crazy with card designs, and if they're going to push one, it'll be the one that makes them all the extra money.
We'll see.
I mean, they certainly seem like they want to reduce card designs. That seems like a concerted effort, and I think that's your best argument right there for Melee and draft staying at like a lower tier. As long as they
Right.
don't have card designs, they'll always be a slightly lower tier, right? I mean, that is whatever trophy, whatever hammer, all that stuff is great, but the card design is, and I think always will be,
It's a real prize.
Right. But we also have
oh
to remember
yeah,
that
by far.
the resentment, though. Like, this was pretty clear at Gen Con of, like, the Star Wars players and the Netrunner players who didn't get card designs, like, were legitimately resentful of, no offense, Chris, of you, who got a card design for winning Gen Con. Star Wars, Netrunner, like I talked to the Star Wars winner, it's like, oh, you have a card design? He's like, no, you Thrones guys are special. Like,
Netrunner got one too.
did they? So Star Wars and Conquest didn't then.
Well, I mean,
Nobody
Conquest is-
plays those card games anyway, so
Yeah.
They're on a downturn.
So, I mean, reducing the number of Star Wars card designs, or excuse me, not Star Wars, Thrones card designs evens playing field.
To some extent, yes.
Yes.
just remove it from GenCon and put it on the Melee Worlds.
I agree with that.
I mean, as long as we don't get the stupid overall champion back, I'm fine.
I don't think that's happening. I think we're safe from that.
Yeah, I hope so.
I agree.
Yeah. I hate
That
it.
led to the
There's
bullshit
so
at
much
Melee.
collusion, man. That has to be done for that overall. I don't want to go back to that.
We were talking, and I was texting back and forth with Ryan Jones yesterday, and saying that I kind of wish we had stats for like who was the lowest net finish of any player who won overall, and just trying to figure the math out. on that.
Aaron has a very strong opinion about who that is. So
Yeah, it's Alex. It's Alex Hines.
It's Alex Hines.
You know it's
Didn't
you.
even come up in conversation. I assumed it was Derek, but you might be right that it's Alex.
Well, Derek, yeah, because of all the DQs.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's silly. Yeah, it's Derek. All right.
All right. So, any final thoughts about Melee or anything before we move on to draft?
I just want to clarify. I saw that picture of the Melee cut list where I was like 21st, and to be clear, I dropped and never meant to play. That does not count as me missing a cut.
No, it totally does, Seth. Because
Strike
you
it
would
from
have
the
totally,
record. Strike
you would
it
have
from the
totally, like when I saw the photo. Well, I'm the one who put the photo. I was like, oh man, if Seth had played his fucking third table, he would have been in the cut.
Playing that Schoenthal deck. I played Chris's deck, so I wasn't going to play Melee in the morning of. I'm sitting there.
I'll talk you into it.
I got convinced to play, and I was asking if anybody had a deck, and nobody did. And then I asked if anybody had a Joust deck, and Chris was nice enough. He said, "Yeah, I have my Joust deck. I have my championship Joust deck." So I played card for card, except for one special plot. I put in Naval. I played Chris's Joust deck in Melee for 2 rounds. So thank you, Chris.
And did well by all accounts, right?
Yeah.
You went 2-2, right?
My first game, I navaled 2 Pentoshis.
Yes.
So good. Got a pile of gold. They have nothing.
Pure troll. I mean, Troll to Win ended up at the final table. So
What's Troll to Win?
the Boston deck that was specifically designed as a troll deck.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
People that's not true. People just say that, and people think in Melee they're like, "Oh, I want to be Kingmaker." Like, shut up, just win and just accept that you're trying to win. It's ridiculous when people say like,
you just told Dan Strohal to shut up. I'll let him know.
Yeah, Seth.
I
By the
told
way,
him that before. I told him that as he was making his deck. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to win. I just want to troll people." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, at least troll them in the cut."
I actually agree with Seth on this. Those who say like, I'm not there to win, just to troll. Yeah, but then you win, and you kind of have to say, well, wait a minute. Why didn't you just like completely focus on trolling? By troll, they mean screw over everyone at the table, take advantage of that, and then win the game. Like that's not really trolling.
Dan
That's
didn't win
winning.
his games. He didn't try and win. He just played a silly deck where he wanted to burn things.
and Kingmake.
Right,
Let's not
Boston-
forget that.
The Boston troll deck was Banger Tyrell with a bunch of rush cards. So how is that troll?
That trolling, yeah.
That's not troll. That's win.
Take it up with Brett and Lauren.
They built a good deck. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Just admit I wanted to win, so I built a deck to try and win Melee.
There we go.
So how about that draft format?
Oh my god, can we get the Pale Mare now? Like yesterday,
Let's-
can we
let's
release
talk
that for
about-
just?
Let's talk about draft in general before we jump right into the mayor.
Fine. It's fucking amazing. It's the best format. It's the most fun I've had playing 2.0.
It's absolute gasoline. Even though I only played one game.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. So the interesting thing that they did, for those of you who didn't see, they built it as a 32-player tournament, but realistically what happened was they sent every 8 people that showed up at the desk off as their own pod. They had a predetermined sheet that determined where people sat and who they played in the first round, and then you basically kind of ran the tournament yourself. There's pluses and minuses to that.
They didn't time the rounds.
What's that?
They didn't time the rounds.
That was a minus. I actually was impressed that they set up the sheet in such a way that you played the person across from you as you're supposed to in draft, and they set up the pairings right. And I thought that was surprising, but in a good way. So they understand at least how draft pairings should work, which is nice. But they didn't. You're right. Didn't time the rounds, and there was no real winner of the draft tournament. Every 8 people had a winner in it, and they got one of the spot gloss house cards, and top 4 got the extra Jon Snows. So it was very cool, but the way they advertised it maybe was not the best. And the way they kind of said, oh, only 32 people, and then at the end they were like, screw it, everybody's in, just come on up. So that was a little strange for those of us who didn't really expect to play and then get frantic text, hey, you can play. But the draft itself was phenomenal. I agree.
So
Did anyone, who all here drafted? I don't know. Did you
I did.
draft?
Aaron took my ticket because I was in the top 16.
So
So-
just Aaron and I drafted.
Duca-
So I guess we're
Duquesne's-
who can really speak intelligently to this subject.
Duquesne says he doesn't see the appeal of draft, And I think that it's a far less limiting giving the 4 agendas. Like, I think the agendas are really what make it work, because you can do almost anything you want.
Yeah. So for those people who haven't read the spoilers yet, the starter pack for the draft comes with 4 agendas. There is an agenda where all knights and armies out of house can be played, and once per turn you can deal your house card to give one of those characters renown.
Well, any keyword, right?
No, it's renown.
Oh, it's specifically renown? Okay, my bad.
There is an agenda where you can play 1 extra house, and you can kneel your house card to reduce a card. There's one where you can play 2 extra houses.
No kneel, it just happens automatically.
Oh, okay. So your first one's reduced.
Yeah.
Is when you can play 2 extra houses, and you get to loot, which is draw a card, discard a card, which is fun. And then there's one in case you completely train wreck your draft. You can play any number of characters out of house, but they all cost +1. So that's the kind of emergency outlet agenda. But Aaron's right that the variety of those agendas that gives you people are drafting for different targets on those levels, and all the agendas seem pretty playable. And it's possible that honestly the armies and knights one might be the best one. I played against that one in the first round, and I actually lost to that renown trigger on the last turn of an hour and a half draft game. Where my Pale Mare was the only reset in the game. Yeah,
that's rough.
So that was super interesting. Aaron, what were your draft experiences like?
I'm an idiot, so I didn't realize I can draft non-loyal cards with those agendas.
Yeah,
Sorry, I can draft loyal cards out of house.
No, that's really important to note. Like, loyalty doesn't actually have any in-game rules. The only thing that keeps you, when you're running a banner agenda, from running loyal cards from the other faction is literally the text on the banner. So in draft, you can draft.
And it explicitly states on the draft rules card, loyalty doesn't matter.
Right.
Right, I just didn't read the draft rules card because, I'm an idiot. So I drafted specifically with the handicap. But yeah, I drafted a pretty good, and like I didn't mean to because Greyjoy just kept falling to me. So I was like, fuck it, I'll hate draft a little bit. And it worked out pretty well. A Stark to Greyjoy, and it played really well. It handled really well. I thought what made the whole experience was, someone say it for me.
Hail Mare.
Hail Mare.
Yeah, I felt like I had to actually manage my hand. I couldn't just play everything out. Like when I had a 5-coster out that had a couple power on them, I couldn't play my 7-coster. I had to wait and be patient. I had to try and protect my hand to make sure that like once the Pale Mare was dropped, I could play that second 7-coster and close. It felt so much more like a skill-based game.
Before you continue your rant too far, Aaron, let's define Pale Mare for those people who haven't been following the draft.
We totally don't do that on this podcast, but go ahead.
Right, so for those of you who haven't been following the draft spoilers, Pale Mare is a 4/8/1/6. It's an omen, and it says, when revealed, each character or each player chooses characters up to a 10 total gold, and everybody else is killed, cannot be saved. So it's basically Wildfire for 10 golds worth of dudes. So that could mean 10 1-cost guys, or your 7 and your 3.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking good reset.
Phrasing, Aaron.
So it's just amazing. I feel like it's exactly what second edition needs. I badly, badly, badly want this. Oh, look, Buzz typed it. I badly want it to be in Joust.
It fills a space. It's a scaling reset, which is great. It allows you to build your deck just a little bit more towards the reset, whereas we don't really have a reset like that right now. I don't think that's quite as tailored, and not tailored just towards one type of deck. Like, it can be a great reset for a small curve, and it can be a usable reset even for a high curve. It's just all about what you build into your deck and how you play your deck, right? But like you said, you can't just go 7-cost, 7-cost, 6-cost, 5-cost, and just have them out there wrecking shop anymore, because Pale Mare would ruin your day, right? But at the same time, once Pale Mare is played, you can kind of then push the big guys in. So it makes people kind of hold off and be a little bit more hesitant. Right now, you get your big guys and you just throw them out as fast as you can, because the worst thing that's going to happen to you is a wildfire or a Varus, but Varus is pretty well countered by the big guys right now. So, yeah, I mean, I love it. I would like to see it. I don't think it fixes everything that 2.0 needs help with, but I think it's a start. I think it's a move in the right direction.
What do you think, Seth?
I think Hail Mary is fine. I think Valar will be fine. I think mostly the draft is fun, but I just wish they had done something different. The whole like draft packs idea is such a failing idea on their part. Even in first edition, even before first edition was dying, every store that ordered draft packs had draft packs sitting around. Who goes and is like, I guess on this weeknight, let's buy 4 draft packs and draft. Like, it's just they could have done it, I don't know, as a cube in a box, like a core set, but instead you just have rarities and you have a cube and you reuse the cube. They could have done something different, because this packs situation, people will play in tournaments and like it, but it will not be useful from a store level, I don't think.
That's actually the first criticism in first or second edition that I've heard of that format, and I'm not saying it's a bad one by any means.
No, it's definitely a very reasonable criticism.
I've seen firsthand that draft packs are available readily in stores, and especially since the starter is a one-off purchase. As long as you purchase the starter that goes with the draft you're doing, you never have to purchase another one. So why would you stock 2 dozen of them or whatever as a store?
I mean, the question is, go ahead, Seth.
I was just going to say, imagine if they charged you $40 for a draft cube, and then they released twice a year expansions to that draft cube. You could reuse it as much as you want. Then you would definitely, on your game night, sometimes draft with your buddies. More people will buy it than buy these packs. I mean, it's just a strange way of doing it for them, since the cards have no value, and the alt art stuff, that's a junk idea in my mind. Like, it's just not well done. It will always be fun at tournaments, and it will never be very successful outside of that.
So somewhere in my head, I went, why don't you tell FFG to try that? And then I realized that you're just Corey's arm, so Corey definitely already has told them that, and they refused.
Yeah, Corey and I talked about it, and they did refuse.
Yep. Whatever.
I mean, it's interesting that you say the alt art idea is junk, because I think it's great. Like, I would definitely buy multiple draft packs if alt art was a thing. Like, that's just how I roll, because I'm a goof like that. And I hope they do the Netrunner model where the World Championship deck is made into a fully alt art, like, buy this deck thing.
I hope so,
I
too.
think that's almost like an extra prize for the winner too, to have your deck kind of immortalized, right? I really think that's a great honor to be like, yeah, buy my deck.
I hope for our sake that those Netrunner ones are sold through really quickly.
Yeah. They need to do something, and they're like for about 500 different things and about 500 different ways, and they generally refuse to do anything, especially if it's very clearly the right thing. So
All right.
I like that this is the podcast of Voltron, Corey. Are we? Like, 'cause that shit's never going away.
All right. So, do we have any draft final thoughts before we sort of go to sort of Gen Con final thoughts / Worlds predictions?
I mean, the draft final thoughts. I wish they'd had them for sale. Like, I wish they'd brought more, because I would have brought 16 of them back to SoCal with me.
I would have too. There's one final thing, actually, I forgot. Rob St. John is going to be running a live draft on his YouTube. So if you are in.
How does he have packs?
He has packs.
That
So.
St. John moves in mysterious ways.
Yes, Rob will have on his YouTube channel, I believe, this week. I'm sorry, Rob. I don't have access to my computer right now. I'm doing this live from a spare room. I pulled a Seth while my girlfriend is asleep. So I can't give you the final details, but if you go on Rob's page, subscribe to him, follow him, he'll be doing a live draft, fully recorded. August 21st. There we go. August 20th.
Sunday at 2 p.m.
Sunday at 2 p.m. You can watch Rob and his friends draft and learn way more about the format. So
that's really cool. Good work, Rob.
Yeah, Rob's great. Highly recommended. But anyway, so final thoughts about Gen Con, Worlds predictions, thoughts, folks.
Worlds
I mean,
will have Valor, right? So presumably we'll have a different
that's going to be
world.
super interesting is how they handle Valor, because they could make Valor legal, they could make Valor illegal. My concern is whether or not they're going to tell us.
Yeah,
when
and they
it's-
could decide 2 weeks ahead of time.
11
Well, no.
days, yeah.
It's,
2 days
It's all in their
before.
hands. Clearly, it's printed because we saw the second chapter pack at Gen Con like always. So
Oh,
clearly,
no.
it's something that they have
I-
access to.
They have them in the draft packs. I have a Valor. I took one home with me. Thanks, Lauren.
I would like, even if it's just a confirmation of the prior rule, a statement from whoever, Nate, Danny, whoever's behind them, or whatever mouthpiece they use, just to confirm the 11-day rule, that we will observe this 11-day rule with the law. Just something, just some statement on it,
Right.
so that we can get as much lead time as possible and know the rules, because that's the whole format.
I mean, I imagine there would be an insane uproar if they broke the 11-day rule. I can't imagine them doing that. It's just a matter of whether they choose to put it out in time, which it seems like they would be able to at this point in time.
I think they will. If I was going to I'll make a bet again with you, Chris. I think Valor will be legal at Worlds.
I'll make another bet with you, which is that the people in control of the release date do not give half a fuck about the date of Worlds and whether or not it's legal given the terms of rules. And I think I will win.
They
that
want it
bet.
to be legal so they
Seth
could.
is 100% right.
Seth's
Right.
right there.
Sure.
Like, they don't care. They just don't care.
They don't care. I agree with that.
Hey,
And it's interesting because I think if we were to go to Danny, I think Danny would care. I talked to Danny not a lot this weekend, but from the little bit that I talked to Danny, and Roy, you had mentioned this too when the situation with Matt happened, that he seemed genuinely upset. I think Danny, as a designer, I can't speak to his card designs yet, but as kind of a steward of the game, I'm so far impressed and happy with the way he comported himself at Gen Con. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Danny was amazing at Gen Con. He filled the marshal role, that official FFG role to the T. There was no really huge rulings problems like there have been at other Gen Cons. It was from the perspective of what Danny had under control, it was a very, very well-run Gen Con.
Yeah, there was a couple issues with rules where the as I believe Kyle Vansel put it, the Walmart greeters, the dudes in the blue vests that were wandering around made mediocre to poor rulings, and had to get those reversed, and there was some minor issue there, but I don't think it was anything that was unsolvable, and hopefully at Worlds itself they'll have a more
Well, they'll have Nate and Danny, so.
well,
So.
Danny cares.
So, I mean, if possible at Worlds, I would recommend calling Danny for your rulings. If he's around and not dealing specifically with someone else, I would just say that, like, don't necessarily trust the Walmart greeters.
Yep, I agree.
So
That's so sad.
I want to throw props to Danny too. Danny was amazing. Like, he really seemed to care about the game. He watched everything. He thought about things. He talked. He gave good answers to questions. Like, he was as personable and helpful as I could imagine anyone being. So, super props to Danny.
All right.
So, prediction for Worlds. I think
Seth
just
will
like
be in second
every
place.
year, just like every year, it's going to be a run of Europeans, DC, and SoCal to see who wins, just like every other year. That's my
I don't-
prediction.
I don't think there are a lot of Europeans going this year. There are more national winners that
It doesn't
are
take
getting
many. It doesn't take many Europeans.
yeah. But I think there are more national winners that are getting sent. But I think there's less people going out of their own pocket. I think.
So no Team Sweden buzz?
No.
Are we not going to see you guys?
They'll just be like
we are
Sweden-
sending the Nordic champion. So it could be a Finn. They are also really great, but
Has that already been decided who that is? Has that championship happened?
no.
Oh.
We're playing the 24th, 25th of September.
All right, so I need to get some rooting interest going for that weekend for.
I'm cheering for Jakob. No offense, Buzz.
I'm the TO, so I'm not sure I'm playing yet. So
Okay, so all right, so definitely Jakob then.
Siakov for real.
It could be the good Andreas.
Ryback. We have a few French people coming over, and the Finnish meta are coming in full force. So,
my bold prediction is that SoCal wins Worlds because we won Gen Con and only sent like 5 guys. And Worlds were gonna be rolling deep. So
the problem is at Worlds there's too many of you and you all eliminate each other because none of you know how to fucking compromise.
that totally happened last year.
Yeah, but if we want to look at the long history of Joust Championships, it'd be more fair to predict that we win.
The whole reason Schoenthal won is because he played me and not one of you dicks.
there weren't enough of us, right, to challenge him, so he rolled over the Gen Con meta. Yeah. But
I'm gonna bet Seth's gonna be at the final table, and I will be hoping that Seth will pull it out. But
Don't
you
put
could just
that
end
evil
up,
on me, Roy.
you could end up still being second place, Seth. But
Yeah,
I hope that he pulls it out.
6 times the charm.
That might be the episode title. All right, so I want to thank our special guests, Chris and Seth, for joining us tonight.
Before the sign off, everybody should check out Dennis Harrison has a YouTube video at a meager contribution. It's the roundup of Gen Con. Yeah, it's already up. So you guys should definitely watch that. There's a good interview with our own Chris Schoenthal, and then the rest of us dancing and singing like assholes, except for Seth, who went home and cried.
Yes, that didn't come out this year. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us, particularly Chris and Seth. It was really great to have a joint interview with both of you and sort of give some, I guess, an honest perspective Gen Con. If this is your first time watching or listening, please follow us on Facebook on Second Sons, yada, yada, yada. We do this every other week, so no episode next week. So there'll be one more, I guess, episode in August. So, which will probably be talking about the chapter pack or the Lanny box or whatever the fuck is going on at that point. So anyway, have a great night, everybody, and hope you all enjoyed this. Kill the street bus.
laters.
All right.
Are we done?
Don't assume we're done.